What's good, Internet? It is Wednesday, June 12th, 2019, and you are listening to Waypoint Radio, coming to you live from day 2 of E3 2019, right here in Los Angeles, California. I'm Austin Walker. Joining me today, Rob Zachney, with a cup of gin and coffee in his hand.
Yeah, I mean, my commitment knows no bounds. I gotta have the coffee to get like hyped for this, but also I gotta keep it mellow. And by the way, I gotta be out of here in like 1 hour.
Kato is here.
Hi, how's it going?
Good.
It sounds weird because it's on a delay. Oh my god.
Don't listen to the delay.
What's to fix?
Nothing. Everything's fine. Patrick Klepek joining me here with a nice lightning bolt shirt. I think it's fashionable.
I like this shirt.
Me too.
Who doesn't love lightning?
Is this more of a Harry Potter thing, or as Rob suggested, a lightning from Final
it's
Fantasy?
just a print.
It's just
But you've got ice cream.
I like ice cream.
Everyone knows why like ice cream would be on a shirt.
It's ice cream. It's colorful. It's delicious.
Also, it's ironic because usually when you get ice cream on a shirt, it's a bad thing. But
Yeah, but in this case,
of course, it's the pattern.
Wow. What a good
exactly.
joke.
In this case, if I got lightning bolts on a shirt, that'd be bad.
Yeah.
That'd be rough. But I like your courage.
Speaking of aesthetics,
Yeah.
what'd you think of that restaurant?
So, longtime listeners of Waypoint Radio this week know that we have had one goal at E3 2019, and that is to eat at Shaquille's.
I guess it is a possessive.
It is. I looked it up a moment ago.
Okay.
It is not plural. That would be a different
Multiple,
restaurant.
wow.
Multiple Shaquille's. It is a restaurant of Southern cooking
And loud music.
and loud music in the LA Live area, which is downtown-ish, near the Staples Center and the LA Convention Center. And we got it in our heads back in day -2, I'd say.
We walked by it. We went
Yeah.
to go see... I think
Microsoft
I think it was the Nintendo stuff.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And then we were going to take a cab back.
Yeah.
And I was like what? There's
Yeah.
always... Every year we come back, that area has been like so developed.
Every year.
Every year there's something new.
Yeah.
Some other bullshit. And this year I was like, does Shaq have a restaurant?
Southern cooking with Shaquille.
With Shaquille, sure, I'm down.
Yeah.
But we walked past it this morning, and we kind of realized, we looked at our schedule, and we said, if we can get Patrick to move this 6 p.m. earlier, we could do an early dinner at Shaquille's, come back, knock out this podcast, be done at a reasonable time. And then we went to Shaquille's. What would you, if we all picked one word to define the vibe of Shaquille's, what would it be?
Well, the first thing that hits you is it's just incredibly fucking loud.
Loud.
Loud is the first, do you like concrete floors and large open spaces and very few soft surfaces?
Uh-huh.
Shaquille's got you covered.
Shaquille's got you covered. Loud. Kata, one word.
Open?
Open. Like an open office plan?
Yeah. In like a weird way, though.
Also, like,
most restaurants are, but there's like things in between, or like
Yeah.
booths and things that break up the space more. And this was just like one giant room, and we were kind of in the middle of it.
We were right in the middle. We're holding court, I'd say. Also, open's good because I bet a lot of people go like, well, what should we get? Oh, this is open.
Yeah,
And you just go in
right.
and just use the food there. Patrick, one word.
Sauce.
Ooh, sauce. Why? What was saucy?
The Shaq sauce on my burger.
Burger. S-H-A-Q, Shaq.
No, yeah, natural.
Nah.
The canonical spelling of Shaq.
We figure out what that Shaq sauce situation
No,
was? All right.
I when I was ordering, I was trying to pick between two burgers, and one had the Shaq sauce and one did not. And when our server came over, I was like, "Could you tell me what the Shaq?" You know what? I don't need to know. I answered my
Take the
own
Shaq
question.
sauce.
Get the one with the Shaq sauce. I'm at Shaquille's.
You're at Shaquille's.
When I'm in his hands, I'm family.
Shaquille's. That's how they
We had a phrase for the restaurant. I can't remember it though.
Me either. I'm filled with Shaquille's instead of thoughts about Shaquille's now.
Shaquille's.
Shaquille's, yeah.
That would have been a good.
That's his Mexican spot. Shaquille's.
Yes.
My one word is denim, because everyone there had a uniform, and it was black pants and a denim shirt.
Oh.
Which is not a good combo, I think. And I think speaks to the incongruity of style in that place, because there were like ferns on the walls, but it was like Southern cooking. You could get like a little porcelain tub of stuffing, but there were like modernist light fixtures, and everyone was wearing denim. It was a very messy vibe. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, there was no coherence to its themes.
Right.
Yeah, I would have to say it wasn't the chemistry is bad on that. It was like, it's what happens when you build an entire team around like just Shaq and whatever other parts you got lying around.
Exactly. So that was Shaquille's. Food was I had like...
It was good enough.
It was good enough. The sliders were good. The ribs less so.
My burger was pretty decent.
They
But
decent.
Which one was it? The
Shack burger.
The Shack burger.
Yeah.
Did you get it with the American cheese?
Yeah.
I did not.
Mm.
I got pepper jack.
I got a fried chicken sandwich.
Was that good? That's like the specialty of the fried chicken there.
It was good.
All right, I should have gone with chicken instead of ribs.
I think that was the way to go. Your ribs looked really tough.
They were tough. They weren't tender. There was no meat falling
At
off
first,
the
I was really
bones.
excited. I was like,
Me
damn,
too.
they are bringing the
presentation through the roof.
Yes.
Yeah.
You really got to admire
Yeah.
the ribs.
There were too many of them for me. I couldn't finish those ribs, but I would have been able to if they were dripping off the bone and the way they should be. And instead, it was just kind of like, arr, arr, arr.
I don't get the sense that Shaq eats there.
Shaq is eaten there, certainly.
Well, sure, take a photo op.
Right. I like that on the burger list it was the Shaq burger, and underneath was the Kobe burger or the Kobe burger. Shaq's on top. You know that I don't care if it's Kobe beef or not.
We all know who the star is.
Kobe comes second. Yeah, exactly. Is that all we got to say? Oh, and then I ordered us a car home. I ordered us a lift. I was like, give me the big one. We're big. We filled up on barbecue and Southern Comfort and not Southern Comfort. We did not drink Southern
that's
Comfort.
Southern Comfort.
Please
Southern
not.
Comfort food. We need a big truck, and a tiny sedan showed up.
Not
But it was-
even like a regular. That was a compact
It was
sedan.
a compact car. It was really uncomfortable, and we sat in traffic for like 40 minutes.
So also, we waited for the car to show up an extra like 5-10 minutes because it's like it says the car is here, but the car we're looking for is not here. Eventually, this little compact rolls down its window and is like, Austin? And Austin's like, my guy?
yeah, and he was like, yeah.
Yeah, I'm here for you. Like, get in. And like, Kato goes, like, checking the plate. He's like, Austin, this isn't our car. The plate's wrong. Austin, the plate's wrong. And I'm like, we are about to get killed
Plate
by...
was not wrong.
The plate
it
was
turned
not
out.
wrong.
Plate was right.
I misread on Austin.
And
Wow.
when we got, which is weirder, because when we got in, we started talking about. He was like, "You ordered an XL," and I was like, "Yes, I ordered an XL. Look at us." And he was like, "Oh, that's my next car," and I don't know what that means. Is he driving to a facility and switching plates onto a new truck after this?
Yeah.
I want to know.
That's not legal.
No.
But, and that was the thing. He seemed pissed at us that we'd gotten in the cab. Like, you know, oh, you ordered an XL? Like, it was our fault we'd ordered an XL, and then we're rudely,
Right.
like, 4 people crammed into a compact.
Look, sometimes a pizza place runs out of cheese.
It's been, man.
What a
it's-
weird week we've had.
See, this is the thing about, like, how the gig economy just, like, robs everyone of their dignity and satisfaction in the commercial transaction.
We ordered a pizza 2 days ago or yesterday. Whatever
Yesterday,
the fuck that was.
well, I ordered 2 pizzas.
You did.
One pizza showed up, and I was, sir, where's
The second pizza.
the second pizza? It's like, oh, they ran out of cheese. I'm like, I was taken aback. Did not know, credit to the guy.
Yeah.
Did not know how to respond to that. I was like, they ran. He's like, yeah, they had to go to the store and get more cheese. Is that a thing?
The cheese store. I'm sorry. Fromagerie. Yeah.
It's 8 p.m., by the way.
Yeah.
The cheese store is closed, sir.
And so,
Sir,
he,
this is a cheese store.
and then he's like, you're gonna have to call Grubhub or whatever. And so I was like, oh, I don't know how to dispute this with you.
And then Grubhub immediately calls and is like, hey, Patrick, what the fuck just happened?
That's like, what did the driver tell you? I was like, he said the pizza store was out of cheese.
The pizza store.
and they're like, huh. I was like, yeah, that was my response too.
Yeah.
And then, a lot of times the reason places are listed on Grubhub and Seamless and those other things, like they don't have
A driver.
drivers, right? And this is the way they solve that the lacking feature. And so the place felt so bad, apparently, that the owner of the establishment finished the pizza.
He could have saved himself a trip. I'll be
It wasn't
honest.
particularly good, but
That was
shout outs
That was
to,
a good call from you. That's the last time we let Patrick order the pizza.
Wow, I went by the
took a
rule.
shot.
I went the rule of 1000s, which is that if it has 1,000 at least 4-star reviews, you have a pretty decent shot of it being good.
The place was fine.
Oh.
That
It was all
second pizza was not good.
No, oh yeah, but I warned everyone. I was like, I'm going weird on the second one.
You did.
I said I can get a cheese, and they're like, wow, get
When?
something else.
You weren't listening.
You weren't involved.
God damn it.
You were elsewhere.
You also ate several pieces of that pizza.
I did. It wasn't good.
Yeah, so
Under protest.
I never.
Do you remember that day where we scored? We don't have to get into it. But we scored a major victory, Kato, at Vice over some shit.
Yeah.
And we were like busy working, but then like someone who is great, a good friend of ours, Joel Fowler, was like, I'm gonna get pizza.
Yeah.
And he ordered a couple pizzas to celebrate, and they were like playing games down in the space that we do some streams from sometimes.
Yeah.
And we had to finish up work for that day.
Right.
And by the time we got there, the only pizza left was buffalo chicken pizza covered in blue cheese.
Just
and neither of us
drenched.
like blue cheese.
Nope.
And I was like, I'm gonna take a slice of this pizza. I'm gonna do it because it's polite. They ordered pizza for us. Other people had shown up to get free pizza.
Sure.
And then I started eating that pizza, and I immediately was like, I can't do it. I can't. And so I left the party. I was like,
Yeah.
I have to go check it, on something, so I could leave and throw out this pizza I'd bitten into and didn't like. E3 2019 is ongoing.
we wasted a whole half hour of Rob
of
Zachney.
Rob's limited time.
Rob,
I'm gonna let you take the driving wheel here.
hold on. I just want to point out that when we sat down, Rob turns to me and goes, "What time is it?" I was like, "Oh, 6:45." He's like, "Cool. We should wrap this up around 8." To which Austin stared at him and said, "What podcast have you been on this week?" I was like, "Why?" He's like, "I got a thing to be at."
In my defense, today was shaping up. We'd be pretty like early out of E3.
It was. we
And
did.
I was like, hey, like Danny and Drew,
Shout outs.
we should push this back to like 8 o'clock ish, just to be safe. No way Shaquille's gonna take 3 hours. Shaquille's took 3 hours. So really, who's to blame?
Shaquille's.
Is it me who didn't tell anyone I had this commitment tonight, or is it the restaurant
Right.
and that sketchy Uber driver?
It's true.
Like, who can say?
Just like life, blame can go everywhere.
We just spread it around.
Rather,
It feels better.
like in the incident that transpired between Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton at the Canadian Grand Prix, which you need to hear about on an episode you dare not miss.
I've never seen him promo.
That
other
was a
stuff
good
like
promo.
That. Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, the podcast is Shift F1. You should probably look it up. Shift F1. That's the Formula One podcast to do with.
Find it in the art section of iTunes.
and Danny O'Dwyer
Great.
almost landed the promo.
Very close. Just practice at it.
Yeah.
Friends of the Table is an actual play podcast focused on critical world building, smart characterization, and fun interaction between great friends. Find out more at friendsathetable.cash.
.cash?
.cash. It's a Patreon. You go to .net to listen, but go to .cash.
Yeah.
You saw some games, Rob.
I sure did.
Where do you want to start?
Man, well, when I was very young, I received a Nintendo Entertainment System for Christmas one year. Initially, I was really into Duck Hunt.
This is the most I've felt flustered by this specific line of question as when one time Dan Riker was like, "Can I ask a small question?" And everyone was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "All right. In the beginning, before there was anything." Great. Thanks.
Oh wait, is this the apples can't be made out of like like stars?
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
that one where he didn't know. What was a beautiful moment of like him coming. It's a beautiful moment.
No,
We
like
should go look it
Carl
up.
Sagan would have been thrilled.
Yeah,
basically
he arrived
the
a
Carl
priori.
Sagan, the Carl Sagan quote of "To bake an apple pie, you must first create the universe."
Yes.
Like Dan Reichert had that moment on a podcast where he understood
Yeah,
like, what that meant.
It was beautiful.
It was
where
amazing.
he came to understand like computers are made of rocks, and it was good.
Rocks we talk to think.
Yeah, totally. Wow.
So I would say where to lead off. Let's go into just since we were just talking about Shift F1. Let's talk about the other thing that's me like on my shit, which is I saw Age of Empires 2.
Totally. Which you
today.
certainly played when you were young.
Yeah,
originally.
it's been a minute. And so I went over to the Microsoft area. They've got meeting rooms over in the Microsoft Theater. And I was actually surprised like how thorough the presentation was. Like it was a couple people from Microsoft. I think one of them from the team that's made some of the HD editions of the old Ensemble games. Mm-hmm. And then, interestingly enough, I think the guy's name was Adam Ice Green. Was from
Adam Ice Cream?
Ice Green.
Oh, okay. Still a good name.
Eyes green.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm writing that down.
Apologies if I got that name wrong. But
change it.
Is from an as yet like unnamed internal Microsoft studio handling Age of Empires.
Interesting.
Generally.
Yes.
Ooh.
Right. And so right away that sort of
Go to print. New Age of Empires confirmed by Waypoint.
And the other thing he was at pains to point out is that yes, there's an internal studio at Microsoft like overseeing the series now with these remasters and then Age of Empires 4. But he said we're not taking anything away from our partners. So like Relic is still apparently on Age of Empires 4, though it's been a little bit since we've heard anything about that. They're still working with the team that's made some of the HD editions. So like in terms of the things that we've already heard about, nothing's changed. But as for the future of Age of Empires, apparently there is a future of Age of Empires, and there's like an internal team at Microsoft handling it now. And the question I asked was, when we were talking about this the other day, I was sort of talking about Age of Empires is sort of back, and they're like putting it in sort of a place of honor. Flight Unlimited, Flight Unlimited, another good flight sim though. Microsoft Flight Simulator coming back. I sort of asked the question about what does this mean about where the PC is at internally at Microsoft, and the response was apparently pretty high up in the company, like C-suite level. Like there's a lot of buy-in for this idea that Microsoft had a lot of really valuable and respected franchises back in the 90s that were kind of allowed to lapse or lie fallow, and they are on board with sort of getting them back off the ground.
I love that the resurgence of Microsoft's PC games division is more 90s nostalgia. Like, man, remember when we were kids? Things were fucking cool. And this is one of those things. I hadn't thought about 90s nostalgia coming up to us in this particular way.
Well, or like corporations could have 90s nostalgia.
Right.
Like in a weird way. Like
right.
I don't know. I don't know what the business case is for this, but it does almost seem like there's an internal image thing where there's some school of thought within Microsoft right now that is like, damn, we used to be a really major we used to be a major PC games publisher, and we kind of completely lit that on fire to push Xbox, and now we'd like it back.
I wonder if part of it is seeing companies that historically were not big PC publishers get into the space. You look at someone like Sega, who console company,
and just Japanese companies in general,
finding success,
have moved and made a lot of money and revitalized. I think part of the Yakuza revival is directly connected to the PC becoming unlocked as a place for people to play those games.
Totally. How was Age of Empires 2 HD? Just Age of Empires.
Yeah, they're not dropping the HDs. This is Definitive Edition. That's what they're called. Definitive Edition.
Not
HD. So it looked gorgeous. It also looked consistent with the original. So it's not. It's still a 2D game, but it's just a much more detailed 2D game with lots of quality of life improvements. But they're not trying to change it too much. They've upgraded the AI. And then also, just a couple quick things. Apparently, if you own the HD edition, because remember they released that HD remaster through this other partner studio a few years back.
Right.
It has not been beloved. The remaster is all right, but the netcode wasn't. And so I think Bruno Diaz wrote about this a little bit when he wrote about Age of Empires 2 for us. But basically, if you want to play high-level Age of Empires multiplayer, you actually have to play the original edition, the disc editions that Microsoft put out. That action is not happening as much with the remaster.
Okay.
This is apparently should solve that problem, but if you have the HD edition, you get $5 off the game. It's a $20 game, so if you have that remaster, you can pick this up for $15.
This quickly is a note that noting the $15 price tag reminds me that a thing that we didn't mention a few days ago is that the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate is not just the PC Game Pass and the console Game Pass. It's also Xbox Live Gold.
Yeah, they mentioned that during the...
But we didn't on the call. Jeez. We do a lot of podcasts over call on the podcast, and in my mind, that clicks it into place. Because at the time, I remember watching it and being like, "Oh, I guess it's $10 plus $5. That's just how much it is. It doesn't cost more."
Right.
So having that knowledge of being like, "Oh wow, that's a $30 price tag normally at $15. Great. Okay. Cool." So yeah, $15.
Also, in this room, they had a giant wall with all the Age of games ever, and I asked well, I see Age of Mythology there. Like,
Sure.
you know, where are you at with that? The answer is once they're through with the definitive editions on Age of Empires, like they're not sure where this road goes, but
Right.
they're already sort of having those internal conversations about like, do we want to put all of this out there? Do we want to bring all of it back? Last thing I'll say is, I don't usually do the, you know, how much content is in this, but my God, this is absurd. So it's like 27 different campaigns between the stuff that was in the original game, the expansion campaigns to the original game, the stuff that was added with the HD remaster, and then there's like a bunch of there's like 4 new factions with the definitive edition.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
What are those factions?
Not sure.
Okay.
We didn't get into that too much. I know that the campaign they were playing was Tamerlane's campaign, so one of the Mongol campaigns. But the other thing so what they were saying is 27 campaigns, way more than I would probably ever have an interest in doing. But you know, hey, it's there. They mentioned that if you nail every single campaign mission on the first try, it's about 200 hours of RTS mission. So somebody out there is going to be like pretty hyped to hear that. It ain't me. I was more excited to hear about like better tutorialization of like how to play RTS at a high level, but still.
I mean, this is the thing for me is like, that's a lot of hours. Has that design held up? Has like the Age of Empires 2 design? Is it still 200 hours worth of game?
I can't imagine that it would be. But here's the weird thing. People loved those games. A lot of people loved playing those campaigns, and they're all just like stories of like you're William Wallace fucking up the English,
right?
And you just do a little skirmish mission where you fuck up the English.
Yeah, that was me. I played all of those games. Like I love
but it was also
all the
dad.
DLCs. Sure.
And I think there might still be like dads or like dad type gamers
more dads than ever
who don't play games, but they have a laptop, could run this and be like, fuck it, this is all I'm gonna do.
Yeah, like can you imagine someone who's like looking for a somewhat engaging but still fundamentally chill experience to do while you like sort of watch TV or something? Like, I could
there was a profile I did
I
I think last year or the year before about this guy who was so bummed that Asheron's Call was being shut down. That's the only game he played. He was like 70s, like he played that for like 10 years. Like that was just it. Like he did other things, had Asheron's Call up, and didn't know, like did not care.
Did not
give a shit about video games, and just gave a shit about Asheron's Call. And I can imagine strategy games in particular attracting a certain type of person that does not play video games. They just play that.
Especially the Age of Empires 2 model, which is like bold in contrast to something where like the differences between factions is like production rates on grain or whatever. Like Age of Empires 2 is it's a historical RTS, but it's also a little cartoonish. Everything felt so clear and crisp in terms of the differentiation between factions at the time, and like I don't know, it was like such an easy RTS to get into. And also, but there was an action figure element to it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, like everyone's city walls and fortifications look different. Like depending what civ you're playing, like your walled city will look different than someone else's.
Very toy box in that sense.
Yeah, and that does look cool. It's interesting you say that, Austin, because like on one level you're right. Where like roughly these civilizations is easy to grok like what their special unit is, and there's a lot of crossover in how they interact with mechanics. But there's also so much crossover that the differences between them get very subtle at the same time. It's like, oh, this faction actually, it's really the second age of this game where you're in the feudal age, and then actually like what you really want is a lot of wood and food. You don't need gold so much, and then you can build this like death ball army, and you got to hit your window.
Right.
And like that's the game at the high level of like just knowing that, oh, like all these civilizations play somewhat alike, but you actually do need to know what that power spike is and know how to use it. So that's an interesting this is why this game is still beloved.
Totally. Cool. You see anything else you want to hit before you have to go talk about race cars?
Well, speaking of racing, Patrick, we saw some people in a hurry to get around town in Dying Light 2.
Just a
tortured metaphor. Speaking of torture, Dying Light 2 reinstates the medieval era's.
He was even racing a car.
Oh, really? There are cars in Dying Light 2 now?
Yeah, I would say, okay.
When I saw that game last year, it was straight up the world has become a feudal state again.
I think there's like...
Oh, it's that.
Oh, but also cars.
there's a similar evolution between when we talked about Cyberpunk last night, like the demo from last, the demo from this year. What we saw last year was more really heavy on story stuff.
What we saw last year on Dying Light 2.
Dying Light 2, right. It didn't necessarily feel like a game. Like you could, the way it was stitched together was like, I don't know what I'm actually doing in this game.
Yeah.
This felt very much like, I'm watching Dying Light 2. Like, especially if you've played Dying Light, like everything about this demo is like, okay. It's fast. Like, there's parkour in Dying Light. That is a huge differentiating factor of that game. But they have just added so many. They've just smoothed it out to such a degree that I am curious to see how that works when a normal person is playing with it, that they're not going to be able to identify that stuff, at least up front, right? Like, you could imagine what they were doing in the demo where they were just, like, busting through things, moving at such a pace that was just, they never had to stop. They never had to slow down. There was always something in front of them that they could do something with. And often it didn't feel obvious in the way that a lot of games with traversal, where it's like, got to paint the white on the, the side. Like, you know where to go. They built, I don't know how this how it worked in Dying Light, but they mentioned that in Dying Light 2, like, the way their technology works is, like, every structure that is put in the game is climbable, right? Like, by the parkour engine that they have, like, tech they have put together. Doesn't mean you can always access it, but, like, every structure when laid down can be interacted with the player, combined with things like a grappling hook, allow you to just do a lot. And it's just the speed that game has, the verticality that game has. It was just it was a fun to watch. Like, I was getting distracted by my phone for some things I needed to take care of, but I was like, I want to keep looking at this game.
I got a strong American Ninja Warrior vibe off the game, and like watching it was like watching this character traverse stuff and like climb really unexpected things where you're like, oh, there's about to like bug splat against a wall, and then they like hook themselves up like a weather vane or something. And in my head, I'm starting to be like, he's been working in his gym in the backyard. He actually built himself a Dying Light obstacle course.
He's part of a Facebook community group where they meet up and do zombie runs.
His friend Ted is here. Ted plays the zombie when in the backyard obstacle course. There was a lot of cool stuff, and also there was a lot of combat parkour in some ways where like you are running and like you sort of run up and like jump off a zombie's fucking shoulders to vault over him and onto a ledge.
Use them as like a jumping pad.
Yes, yeah.
There was another moment where to mitigate the fall damage, unclear how this works mechanically, but it is a mechanic in which, like, rather than like go around the zombie, there's a window in front. He just pushes the zombie and then uses the zombie to cushion his fall. And it's like, it's some bullshit, but damn, it looked cool as hell.
And again, like, it's an E3 demo. Who knows how it'll be in the game, but I also love this detail where, like, as civilians are watching you come just tearing through, like, some of them watch you just barreling down on them, and, like, they come to, like, look, like, what's going on, and then they, like, realize that you are coming through that window.
Booking.
And they start, like, backpedaling like crazy to get out of the way. So, like, the parkour looked great. The catch is always that a bit, rather like with the EA game that everyone...
Mirror's Edge.
Mirror's Edge also had this problem where when you were in that flow state, when everything was going well, it felt great. Once you broke it, it didn't feel as great.
But that's also because the combat was so poor in Mirror's Edge. And so often, like Dying Light, building off of Dead Island, a game whose combat I did really like, and the combat in here looks really smooth. We're getting... I don't... Is this getting picked up on the mics? Okay. Well,
there's some landscaping going on.
They're just maintaining.
Mm-hmm.
Not that tree, though.
That's the neighbor's... Okay, so, we don't have time.
We don't.
I think that you should, generally speaking, make sure that giant trees you have don't go over onto... next to your neighbor's house, blocking a big door.
Or climb through their front door, yeah.
Just saying. Anyway.
But the combat looked all right.
Yeah.
Big change is it's no longer weapon effects are randomized. It is triggered.
Yeah, so the way that like Dead Island and Dying Light worked is like you could get a fire stick or whatever, but it well, that wouldn't work so well.
Fire bad.
Yeah.
Like a fire, you would make like
a sword that has a shock effect.
Right,
on it,
but
right?
it would be a percentage base, right?
Yes.
So it'd be like you get it like a quarter of the time.
Yeah.
Whereas in this, like it sounds like they're gonna go down sort of like empowering the player with elemental effects. Like, no, right now I want to use fire. Like, no, right now I want to use shock.
You burning through resources to do that?
They didn't really explain that part of it, but I would guess that, like, yeah, you'd have attachments that, like, run out, or they probably just break, like, very easily. Sure. One that wasn't as present in what we saw last year, but was much more present in this one, is like, as the parkour is happening, you're getting all these little glimpses into, like, smaller parts of the society. Like, the demo opens in a bar where people are just chilling and, like, having a good time. And, like, part like, that's not new to see stuff like that in games like this, but I appreciate when games emphasize, like, in their post-apocalyptic fiction, that, like, people would relax. People would, like, find a way to, like, just have a night out. And, like, I, like, found the bar to be, like, really credible and atmospheric and sounded great.
The bar was fantastic.
Yeah, it, like, really set, like, a kind of mood that you're like, oh, like, they were setting the staging for the world really well, incredibly.
And, like, you know how I feel about a good audio mix. And again, like, who knows how these things appear, like, once a game is released in the wild.
And you're not in a theater specifically built
right,
so that
and
the
almost
audio
certainly
mix is
they
fantastic.
probably assigned specific audio channels for this theater. You know what I mean? Like, they've probably done a lot to dress this up. But, like, you're in this sort of, like, this nightclub as everyone's waiting for the water supply to finally run down in the city.
Yeah, it's a big party because they don't know where the water. They've literally run out of water.
Yeah,
everyone's could die in the next couple of months, and so fuck it, let's party.
Yeah, and it starts out like the diegetic like sound that you hear in the game, like the music that's scoring that is accompanying the scene is being played by a musician on the stage. It's a Metric song.
The one from the trailer.
Yeah. Oh, right. Right. Is Metric in the game?
No.
No, the act was a woman named Lola, but it's a Metric song. But what was really cool is it sounded utterly convincing when you're like, the demo starts in the bathroom and you only hear like the bass line
really
through the wall, and then you open it and as it's slowly, as you walk through it, you hear it sharper and sharper. And then at a key moment, like as you interact with one of the first major characters, the mix completely clears up, and the guy turns around, the conversation begins, and the main line of the song comes in.
Yeah.
And it's a moment.
I wonder if that moment's going to be in the game, or if that's an E3 demo where you can really tune it and craft it in such a way.
It's by all appearances, it was like one of the first major like quest lines in the game.
Right,
I wouldn't. But
you know what I mean, like being in the bathroom, timing it that way, all that stuff.
Yeah, it was unclear like how much control the player would have in that actual situation in which you would lose that moment.
But we've all had that stuff in games, like Red Dead Redemption fumbles this stuff right and left, where like things don't sound like you're in the moment, you're not in the scene, they sound too distant or they cut out weirdly. Like, it just got me really excited about the idea of, oh yeah, when you're in this world, like there's a lot of details that like remind you like where you're standing, like you are in this place in this moment. It was really cool.
Is that stuff? So last year the demo we saw was super interested in like choice and the world changing based on those choices.
Yeah, so we interviewed someone after and was like, this demo seemed much more, this is how you play the game. And they're like, yeah, like last year was about selling people on the story, announcing Chris Avallone as like one of the story writers. And we had this interesting moment where one of the designers we were talking to, this is this year, where I don't know in which question it came up, but it was when I was asking about the story to the game, and he's like, we read the comments online about our games, and Dying Light, Dead Island, the way people sort of talk about our studio is that good at gameplay, not good at stories. And this like really like and he said, and that's why we hired like someone from the main quest writer of the Bloody Baron quest and The Witcher is working on this. They announced that stuff around at E3 last year. Yeah. But it was just like kind of like it was. I'm not selling it well enough, but like the way he said it, he was like, yeah, like we suck at stories, and like we want to show people that like we're doing a better job of that. It was like a really interesting way to phrase something, which most developers are like, and how we're expanding the story in the sequel, and then that's how you put the positive spin. He was just like, yeah, like people said it wasn't good, and it wasn't good.
There was some cleverly designed, because they were still showcasing choice. Like, the thing that sets this off is it's like sort of a fraught meeting of like the 5 families that's about to go down, trying to cut a deal around water to avert this disaster. And like things go bad, and you think you know what's happened, but like crucially, like it seems very cut and dried what you've just seen, but like crucially, what did you actually see? Like, you were actually looking away when everything went down. What actually happened? And so you go through this entire quest to, like, basically invade this fascist compound. And
Who
like,
controls the water?
Right. And you manage to do that, and you get in there. You infiltrate the compound. You get in there, and if you're probably expecting, this game has heavy Metro feel. Like, just it feels a lot like a Metro game. You might be expecting it to feel like the Reich bases in Metro. You get in there, and like, you know, it feels pretty chill. Like,
There's just people.
like,
There's people on like a tire swing.
Yeah,
There's people at like a little market.
There's class taking place, and like the kids are just being taught like normal like daycare type stuff, not like here's how you serve the state, but like
right.
And so it's
And the
like,
character remarks upon that. Like, he radios back to home base. He's got like his binoculars out, and he's like, "Hey, so you sent me to this like war compound. It just seems like a lot of nice people."
And what's cool is that's still ambiguous, right? Like, you know, it could easily be like fascism for you know, externally facing, where, you know, brutal and exploitative, but internally, like, you know, we like to have fun here. We keep it pretty nice. But crucially, it turns into one of those situations where you hit the, like, in the demo, the character you've sort of been brought to confront seems very genuine when he does not know what the hell has just happened and what has gone wrong, and so you have to make a really snap choice.
Well, I love the way the dialogue is framed, because the reason you go after, was it the general or something like that, is like, oh yeah, like, your men killed our guy. Was it Fred or Frank?
Sure. Loves Terminator.
And and when you get up to confront the general, he's like, your guys killed Frank. And he's like, we did? And, like, in a genuinely sort of like, what? And he's like, who shot him? He's like, did you see our guys shoot your guy? He's like, and your character goes, well, Matt said. And it's like your parent just caught you in a lie.
Yeah.
And it's like when you rethink back through the scene, like, he's fucking right. Like, when there's a panning of the camera where you see the groups talking, then you pan over to talk to someone else.
Yeah.
You hear a shot. You don't actually know what happened down there. You just then sprint into action and murder a bunch of fools, and then go off on this quest. So then when he confronts you, that, like,
that's cool.
It's like, you know, you seem evil and fascist, but you've got a point here.
Well, and so you make the choice, like, in the demo, they make the choice, like, fuck it, we're going to turn on the water pumps and release it. And so there's a cutscene of, like, the reservoirs being drained and the water, like, draining out this entire segment of the city that's been submerged for, like, years.
Right.
And so, like, that becomes a new playable area, what used to be buried under the reservoir. But the flip side is that entire, like, base that you just went through with, like, the schools and everything becomes a, like, dry, deserted wasteland as that faction gets wiped out after being weakened.
So that was one of the big things they did focus on last year, was like huge structural change in the environment as the choices get made. The one that they'd shown last year was that, like, you can either choose to turn one location into kind of a black market where you can buy and sell stuff, or a kind of like free water tower for everyone to come to and like get the water. But if you do the water one, it was being controlled by like the hyper-military faction.
It felt if people played Witcher 2, like Witcher 2 has a moment in which you make a major story decision that cuts off, it basically splinters the last third of the game, and just enormous amounts of game you will just never see. I don't know if it's going quite that far, but it does feel like they are, at least the way they're pitching the game is around, like, you're going to make choices, and it's not just like a character's mad at you. It's like, no, just like that part of the city is fundamentally changed, and you will never experience whole quest lines as a result.
It is so frustrating, but like, because I know to do the thing I'm about to present means more work, and also is like anathema to designer intent, which is to not waste work or to not produce stuff that players don't see. But I more and more wish that I could play games that did this exact thing and locked me out of stuff. I saw briefly, and we'll talk more a little bit, Outer Worlds today, and one of the questions I asked to one of the writers on that game, or one of the narrative designers, not a writer, probably also a writer, but narrative designer means something different, was like, hey, how often are my choices in the games that are kind of in the Fallout or a kind of Elder Scrolls, heritage, you often get a choice inside of a dialogue conversation where you go like, oh, I can use my charm skill. Oh, I can use my hacking skill in this to like get a little thing on the side. And those normally give you bonuses. They give you maybe extra money or an extra side objective that gives you maybe a slightly better narrative outcome, and maybe more experience points or a special weapon. But it's rare that a choice that you make fully shuts down an entire branch of play, and there are exceptions in like major quest lines, but he basically said like, yeah, one of our big touchstones is like to not cut the player off from content. And like, it was one of those moments where I was like, yeah, I figured. Like, yeah, that is the way.
And you see how you arrive at that.
Yeah, I do.
But like I think back, like Witcher is like probably the last time I remember I played that game because Vinny Caravella loved The Witcher and no one else. And I was like, Winnie, I'm gonna play The Witcher 2. And then like we picked different sides, and it was like so fucking cool to talk about that game then, because we had completely different. Even though you end like you wrap around and then it conclude the same way, but it was just such a neat thing to be like, holy shit, I didn't see any of that stuff in the game, and to see whole different sides of a conflict in which you can't easily go figure that out. Yeah. And so games are expensive.
Totally,
and they're hard. So, I wish even if you're not gonna cut off like a whole third of a game, I like, even though as a player I hate, but like intellectually as a player I love when a game says like no.
I would love to play through Dying Light 2 and at the end of us compare notes about what our cities feel and look like and how those things cascaded out in different ways. And I wouldn't feel cheated by not having the same stuff y'all do.
Right.
And also, games are way too long right now for my life, and that's a subjective thing, I know. But if that means the difference between making a 10-hour game or a 20-hour game or a 30-hour game, and you go with a 10, but like my playthrough feels really distinct, I'm super happy with that.
Yeah. I mean, this is reminiscent of a conversation I had with Cara Ellison yesterday about Vampire.
Do we want to like pivot and start talking about that a little bit?
You have one more day where you might get a chance to see it. So
I doubt I'm going to. They've not reached out to me at all.
Okay.
But I would love to. I have plenty of time. If you're listening and you have an extra spot in your Bloodlines,
didn't you already do this pitch?
But maybe someone who's watching. If you have a Bloodlines 2 demo seat available, I can sneak in there. You let me know, and I'll drop everything and do it. Maybe not. Yeah, no, I have one thing tomorrow left. I mean, it's a big one thing. It's Nintendo, but like, I can figure it out.
Oh, fingers crossed. Let's talk about it tomorrow if you haven't made it happen.
So tell me the comparison.
Yeah, so I talked about that. Like what they were laying out is there's some really major choices you make that like inflect the arc of your relationship with certain factions, and they have a lot of ripple effects, not just in terms of faction relationships, but like things that happen in the world. And the thing I sort of asked was, you have the kind of Telltale or Mass Effect model where like your choices, like they become your story, but like it all kind of converges back at the same place.
They're like they're character beats rather than like more like world consequences.
Right, you're going through roughly the same story, just a few details change, versus like the interactive fiction model or like the Twine model, where the game isn't your playthrough, the game is all the playthroughs, right? Like the entire work is the sum of all its contradictions and alternate paths and the different possibilities that were inherent in that game. I was like, what you're talking about with all the ways that Vampire can go different or go sideways and change relationships, like what model are we following here more? And then Car's response was, for her, it feels a bit more on the interactive fiction side. But for the other narrative designer who was there, Nick, you wrote the earlier
Avalon. Sorry. Someone earlier had mentioned that Chris Avellone also working on Bloodlines 2.
Yeah, sure, of course.
Also working on Star Wars Fallen Order.
Sure, of course he is.
It's like Chris Avellone hour here. Also, correction from the other day.
Brian
reading his own writing. The other day I mentioned Fallout New Vegas and was talking about Avellone as a lead on that. Not true. Josh Sawyer is the lead on New Vegas.
Yeah.
Avalon did a bunch of DLC for it.
Yeah.
So anyway,
But yeah, so like it's that is sort of apparently an ongoing debate within the Bloodlines camp. Is like, should we be thinking more of this as like an IF type narrative where actually the real game is like all the different ways it could have gone, right, and what that reveals about characters and motivations in the world, versus like, no, you have your playthrough and that's your story,
right, which is cool. Yeah, absolutely.
The one last thing I'll say about Dying Light is one of the things that's fascinating about Dying Light is that it's been a long time between Dying Light and Dying Light 2. Like, so far between what a traditional...
so.
Yeah, it's been like 6 years or something like that by the time this probably ships, which is just an extraordinary amount of time for like a sequel to finally arrive.
Yeah.
And part of that is because they have continued to provide like substantial, like world-changing free add-ons to Dying Light for years. And he pointed out, he's like, yeah, we still have a team that's making content for Dying. He's like, actually, he's like, because of like getting geared up for like the release date of Dying Light 2, we realized, we actually need to spin up another team to keep making stuff for Dying Light 1. And so I said, that wasn't probably clear when you shipped that game, and like, how did that influence the decision to when and to greenlight Dying Light 2, a game that was inevitable, but like, when do you fit that into your production process when you're still supporting the first one? And he said, well, first of all, it was extremely weird because when we shipped Dying Light, we did not think, we weren't sure if we made a good game. Yeah. Like he said, we were extremely shaky on it. He said we published it. The reviews, also extremely shaky. And then he said, then it got out to players, and over time, like, it sort of started, like, they started reading comments, and it achieved like a really, not just, it went from cult sort of thing to just like a huge ass game, like that was extremely popular. It took like a very weird arc. And he said one of the things that was interesting was that then, as they would be in brainstorming meetings for Dying Light 2, which they kept pushing back. They'd have a team working on it, but it wasn't in full production for a long time. And someone would be like, I want to try this in Dying Light 2. And so they would put like a version of it into Dying Light DLC, knowing based on the response, they could figure out what they're going to do in the sequel. And I thought it was just like a really fascinating way to make a game.
Oh, and your character's infected, and has now you actually have to really limit your utilization of nighttime hours because part of the progression of the disease, it sounds like, is tied to like night. So like they've sort of, it sounds like in one way they've amped up the risk reward of like operating at night. You still have the thing where like the best loot is out there, the most experience is out there, but also sounds like maybe they figured out that night was really tough and punishing in that first game, and maybe like you don't want to force people to spend half the game playing it on like ass-kicking mode.
Totally. Was there still like a light horror element at all? Because last year when we saw it, there were moments of like walking into a room and seeing 30 like sleeping zombies.
Yeah, there was like they didn't show the night mode. I think that's like one of the final big reveals for the game and how like that works, because they keep saying they've like fundamentally restructured how that fits into the game. But there was a moment where a character fell through like a series of floors and then ends up in like a hive, like you and I saw, in which you get down there and you just look around and there's like 100 of these fucking things, and they just immediately start coming after you. It looked good. I like was not big on Dying Light. I bounced off it, but so many people that I respect loved the shit out of that game that eventually I was like, well, I'll just keep waiting for Dying Light 2. And then it's just like taken forever for us to get there.
Yeah.
But I came out of that demo like stoked to play more of that.
Awesome. Next year.
Yeah, spring 2020.
Spring. Okay, cool. You have anything else, Rob? Is your plate empty? You've eaten all the shacks off of it, all the Shaquilles?
All the Shaquilles, yeah.
All the Shaquilles?
Sheila Shaquilles.
Well, Rob, I guess you did it. It's 8:01.
Awesome. I'll be back.
You fucking nailed it.
I'll be back later.
No, you won't.
No, you won't.
No, you won't. We're going to be done.
I believe in you guys.
We don't have that much more. Well, we could do a lot, but with you here, we could do a lot.
Yeah.
But you're going.
I gotta go.
All right. Hazard, do you want to switch seats? Do you want to take a break? Let's take a
5-minute break, and we'll come back and we'll talk Final Fantasy VII. We'll talk Outer Worlds,
Star Wars, Jedi Fallen Order, which both Kato and I got to play. Yeah. That game's good. They fucked up.
It has bonfires.
It has bonfires. It has Estus flasks.
God damn.
It has a map that tells you that if you go back to different planets, you will be able to open new doors because you have new abilities. And that map is projected diegetically by your droid that sits on your shoulder, and it's a cool 3D map.
My beautiful little puppy droid.
So we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and talk about that shit. Stick around. The Hard Times promo was like a classic.
Ric Flair?
Not Ric Flair. No. Ric Flair was
The target of the...
Yeah. It was why am I blanking? It's because I'm pouring a beer and trying to think at the same time. Dusty Rhodes.
Oh, okay.
Big dude, kind of like an average Joe, appealing to
Like a middle class sort of character.
working class
character.
Absolutely working class, and also someone like a big white dude, but also very much using black slang in a way that's maybe appropriative, but also felt genuine in a way that like. If you spoke to him off mic, it felt like he would be that person. And he cut a promo called the Hard Times promo. That is, Hard Times, Daddy. Like, the Nature Boy Ric Flair was this, like,
I remember.
character at the era, in that era. And Dusty was, like, someone who was like, you get fired from the fucking factory. That's Hard Times. So, it was good. Shout-outs to the Rhodes family. They just had a great day. We can't do this. We cannot do this.
Stop.
AEW seems like it's going to be a pretty good thing. Anyway, wrestling. I mean E3. 2019.
Well,
it's a show. It's a presentation. Sometimes you're disappointed, and yet you tune in every year, just like WrestleMania.
we should just pick up where we left off.
Which was?
We just fucking Star Wars.
Star Wars.
So
Jedi Fallen Order.
I was sitting next to Brad Shoemaker.
Speaking of Giant Mom.
Speaking of Giant Mom, we happen to be in the same Final Fantasy VII presentation, and while we were waiting for the power went out
that was amazing.
One of the halls while we were waiting to actually play the game, and when you play, I promise this will all make sense. When you before you go play FF7, the theater they have set up is you sit down. There's a bunch of like Shinra advertising propaganda on the walls. And then there's a Shinra commercial that plays. It's like we're like powering the city, and like it's good. Like
good.
It's. I hope if they have a lot of shit like that in the game, like that would be nice and additive. But there's like then it gets hacked by Avalanche to explain to you the controls of Final Fantasy, and it keeps like the lighting is going in and out in the room. But then all of a sudden like all the lighting went out, and you heard kind of like a doom, and it's like that doesn't sound right. And then you heard just like a lot of confused faces outside, and all the power had gone out at E3 for about 30 seconds.
We were waiting for our Star Wars demo at that moment, and then like everything shuttered and all the computers turned off, and like we were not yet on our demo station, but I bet someone on that demo station was disappointed that they had to go. I mean, not disappointed because the game was good. So,
but as I turned to Brad and I said, "Well, what have you played?" And he's like, "Well, I just played Star Wars." And I said, "Well, I heard that they should have showed what they're letting people play." Because apparently it's cool as shit.
And he was right. Mm-hmm. So, you remember we saw that initial demo on Saturday, that footage?
Yep.
The stuff that we saw today, Kato, Natalie, and I went and saw it and played it, was the same basic chunk of gameplay, but it's amazing how much is done with just a little bit different pacing. They start about 10 minutes before that. Actually, you know what? Let me not start there, because I think it's important that we start with where they started, which was I sat down with one of the narrative designers on that game, and she handed me a controller and put us in a gray box room. Gray box is like a term used in game dev that's kind of just like literally a gray box of just like
it has no
textures,
art, right? Art. It's like often to fuck around with mechanics.
Right. This wasn't quite a gray box. It was a gray box with like a floor and the sky.
But it's not meant to look.
No, it's not like a level. It's not an arena. You can imagine one day it becomes a combat arena that has like high quality textures
of white
and
walls and
right, totally. In this case, though, it was kind of like polygons, and then like it was a room that was like wall behind me, and then open air in the front, and it was a wave-based like combat tutorial where you work through like 21 different waves, starting at like a stormtrooper with a gun where you just hit the button and you like counter him, to like an ATST chicken walker walking around and you need to deal with that. And so it was so important they start me there, because it meant they were like, here, feel this game. Pick up the controller, feel how good it feels to play this game. And so I think, if I hadn't played Sekiro this year, I would be even more astonished. But within the first 5 minutes of messing around in that gauntlet, I was like, okay, this is actually, there's something here. The basic breakdown of this game is that you have a basic attack on X. We played with an Xbox One controller. On X, a force, a swing, a focused attack on Y.
Like an overhead?
It's like an overhead, or you can mix it up into your combat strings.
Okay.
A dodge on B, a jump on A.
Oh, wow, that sounds familiar.
Heal up on the D-pad, which
Okay.
consumes one of your healing charges. Your little droid, BD, shoots a little healing thing of Bacta juice or whatever, Bacta fluid, and you heal with it really quick. And then you have force abilities on your triggers. I guess LB is a parry or a defense. You hold it down, and you're in defense mode, just like Sekiro. You time it, and you.
In
do
this
a
case, so
parry.
is the lightsaber kind of bouncing around
Yes,
to track
you're kind
it,
of
as
like-
opposed
you're
to
kind of
just
like spinning it.
Sekiro's like
You're
ching,
holding it.
ching,
Yeah,
ching.
yeah. You kind of hold it and do the right block attacks as they come in. You know what I mean? If you're holding it down.
Okay.
Or if someone's shooting at you, you're kind of doing a twirl and
Right.
catching the blasts as they come in. It looks really cool. Kata, remind me if I'm right.
Unlike Sekiro, however, if you try to spam it,
You will not
the parry time is not.
Yeah,
there's
there-
a big cooldown in between each button press.
Yes, you cannot just parry, parry, parry. The window is still pretty wide. It is not punishing.
It's punishing if you tap it a lot and are expecting it to
Yeah.
work like Sekiro, which it does not.
How does it communicate the parry and the animation?
It's just the animation. It is.
Oh,
just,
so it's like for clarity, if you haven't played Sekiro, when there is kind of a distinct, as you play the game, it becomes very clear in the animation when you should be ching.
Yeah, well, I think the animations are pretty clear. It's
Okay.
it's during the wind up.
Okay.
It is a wide window. I never really missed a parry that I felt like I was
Ready for, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I missed parries when I was I'm getting overwhelmed, but most of the time I hit them parries. Left trigger, right trigger is push, was force push. Right bumper was that force pull or was that stasis, Kato? Kato's talking to someone off mic. Right bumper and left trigger were either force pull and force slow or the other way around.
Are those on cooldowns?
They all pull from a force meter that you have, a little blue bar that you build back up by doing basic attacks. Enemies have a stamina bar, which you might also call a posture bar.
Interesting.
Basic enemies, you hit them twice with your lightsaber, they block them. They block those attacks. And then their posture bar is broken. Their stamina bar is empty. And then you attack one more time, and you get you kill them. You get a death blow.
Most basic enemies are, once you've gotten that meter away, it's just one hit.
They have health bars, but that basic hit will kill most enemies. You can also just overwhelm them without doing a parry. You can hit.
Right.
Their posture is broken. You get the real damage in, and you get kind of one of the canned animations that you get the kill with. Though sometimes also you're hitting enough people at a wide enough thing, you don't get the animation. You get just
they just roll over.
Yeah. Cool lightsaber scar appears. Harder enemies, you have to break their posture a few times.
Well, see, that in the demo.
Yes.
It seems like those types of not. They almost functioned as sort of mid-boss enemies in Sekiro, where it's hey, this is going to be kind of 1v1 or 1v1 with a couple of other enemies.
Right. So that's what that gauntlet ended up being. It starts with here's a stormtrooper. By wave 8 or 9, it's all right, there's a stormtrooper up here with a rifle, another one up here with a rifle, 2 of them with stun batons on the ground, 1 with a flamethrower, and you cannot reflect the flamethrower back, and then 1 with an extra long stun baton or something like that.
How do you parry the lasers? Is that just...
It's just a timing. It's
okay.
If you hold it down, you'll block them away, and if you time it like a parry,
then it goes ding,
then it goes back, knocks them out.
Shit, none of that stuff was communicated at
and it
all
feels
in that
so
demo.
good.
So great.
There's a point where you're fighting an Imperial floater droid, the Imperial Scout droid, the one
little
from,
black,
the the ones that do that sound from Empire Strikes Back.
The classic.
I didn't know I had that in my back pocket, but I did. The ones from Empire Strikes Back,
Right.
and they will shoot at you twice, or they'll shoot at you a bunch, but you block them back twice, it falls to the ground and gets electrically charged, and then you can force push that, and it blows up.
Oh,
or,
that's good.
it basically tries to charge you and self-destruct.
Right.
But you can force push it away.
Get out of here.
There's a lot of good interaction in that way of okay, if I can push one of the flamethrower units up against the wall, the pack on its back filled with fuel explodes. If I can pull someone in front of me, they can take shots from incoming fire.
Sure.
Or the one that neither of us pulled off, but the demoer did later, is the classic pull forward a person to just freeze a blaster bolt, pull someone in front of the blaster bolt, and then let the blaster bolt unfreeze and it hits them, right? So, so it just all of this stuff just felt good already, and I was like, okay, the combat model's really good.
Yeah.
Kato, you also played through the gauntlet stuff. Am I missing anything on this side?
That I can think of. I mean, did you mention there's also degrees on the push and pull, which is nice,
right?
Because you can kind of chain a very light tap of a force pull or push that will stagger enemies for a second, and that means they're not attacking. You can stagger them out of an animation, basically.
So it's not like a full push. You're just sort of like,
but
hey,
it's
chill.
Like, but if you hold the button down,
then
you
it's
can
like a
boom. But it uses more of your.
So if you got like 3 enemies charging, it's like, okay, hold on, like boop, 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 and then take out the one.
And that like the higher level stuff, I think I got to wave 17, you got to wave 18.
Yeah, something like that.
And in those waves, those later waves, you start thinking very creatively, like, all right, how much force juice do I have? How do I make this force juice go a long way? How do I make sure that I'm actually able to, like, okay, the hardest one for me was the one where it was, we didn't talk about this. There's the KX droids, the like K9 from or whatever, KSO or whatever from.
There's the Rogue One, right?
Yeah. And that one does not get staggered. It does not even have I don't think it even has a posture meter. It just has a ton of fucking health.
Yeah.
And
it's like when you see a big dude in Dark Souls with a hammer.
Right.
It's like, okay, good luck.
And
it's like the ogre.
Yeah, it's
because it even did a big grab move that kept fucking us up.
Choke slams, and it has like super armor, to use the fighting game term, which is to say it's hard to stagger it. Right? Even when you parry it, there was definitely moments where Natalie and I were like going into coach mode, where we're like, all right, Kato, you get one hit in and then back out. You know, you can't get that. Don't get greedy. Don't get that second hit in. And that motherfucker chases you around like it's Tyrant or like what's the Mr. X in Resident Evil 2 remake, where like. Is just charging at you. Is just like resilient of anything you throw at it. You can try to do the push, like not working. So that plus 3 or 4 stormtroopers plus an Imperial probe droid, and you're like, all right, how do I solve this puzzle, this like combat puzzle, in a way that felt sort of similar to Sekiro minus the stealth element. And instead of the stealth or even the tools, you're thinking about force powers, and you're thinking about, okay, I can try to quickly reflect back 2 shots to the probe droid, then I can push it into 2 of the stormtroopers, then I can like back out a little bit, try to get some distance, recover some health because I got hit, then I'll use the force pull to pull someone in front of me and between the big droid and me so I can deal with them first, and then I can just kite this droid. But the droid is like force stepping, like, do, like the Terminator. Great. So at that point alone, I was like, "This is a cool demo."
Right.
Yeah.
Like, wow, cool. Like, wow, cool demo.
Classic game crit.
Classic game crit. Austin Walker right here, award-winning critic. Wow, cool demo. And then she took us through the beginning of the story sequence, but gave us structure and showed us something. There was something different about the pacing and the way she did it that made what was a very rushed and inconsequential feeling demo from the other day suddenly take on a little bit more grandeur in a weird way. So it's the shot that you see in whatever that follow-up footage came out, the trailer
the Xbox
that was
press
at the
conference,
Microsoft, where it starts with like this wide shot of the swamp, and you kind of pan and you see the AT-AT walkers. I still want to say AT-AT. I know.
I feel like I know that one.
I've always said AT-AT.
So have I.
In this game, they say AT-AT.
Wow.
He specifically.
That is how it's supposed to be said, but as a kid, I always said AT-AT.
But like, I'm not going to say ATSTA for ATST.
It's the same way in the Final Fantasy VII, I heard Barrett say Mako, and I was like, excuse me, it's Mako.
Wait, it's Mako. It's Mako reactor?
Maybe I'm confused. I remember.
I'm with you. It's Mako.
It's Mako.
It's Mako.
It's Mako.
I want to say.
That's a shark. It's a Mako shark.
It is
not
a
Mako shark.
Mako.
Well,
the character in Pacific Rim is Mako, though, right?
Right, but that's a different name.
It is a different name, but it's spelled the same way because of hiragana.
Right.
Anyway.
Sorry.
So you see the AT-AT and you swim over to it and you see that it has like moss and stuff on it. Begin to climb it. It's pouring rain. You're in this like gross swamp, or you're kind of in like a low lake that's becoming a swamp as the AT-AT is walking towards the kind of like denser jungle.
Right.
And you climb into it, and it's already like the degree of, if you are a Star Wars nerd or if you have a fondness for Star Wars like I do, like seeing inside of it, seeing like there's a speeder bike attached to one area in the back. It's like a little compartment for like an ejection with a speeder bike. You go through, it's all cool. You go in, you take out some guards, you take over the AT-AT, and you like pilot it from the inside from a perspective where you're like kind of like behind the character. You don't just like, it doesn't just do first person. At first, I didn't even realize that this was gameplay. I thought it was like a cutscene.
Right, no.
And then it's like, oh no, yeah, you're like marching this fucking thing through
Good.
and shooting people. And it was cool to see a scripted sequence like that. And it set the stage pretty well. Saw Gerrera, the Forrest Whitaker character, sees you at one point, and you see him like grapple hook away from the perspective and then land on the AT-AT. He's like, "Who are you? Who's it?
What the fuck?
What are you doing?" And you're like, "Oh, I'll hop out and we can talk." And then we kind of come in at that point on the mission, as it was shown before, except instead of immediately going to running and fighting the stormtroopers and
To the
fire
right,
beetles,
right? Like there's, yeah.
You pause, and she walks us through the kind of hub for this level, which is like a bunch of people looking at maps, a bunch of this kind of like rebel group, like just like having conversations that you can overhear.
There's like a little like hub area, literally, where like you just...
where your ship lands, because you've cleared out the landing zone, and your ship, the Mantis or the something Mantis, lands. And she takes us on board the ship and shows us that like there's a map that can take you to other worlds, because you can backtrack in this game and go back to previous worlds to do side activities or side quests, or to go back and open doors, or because the main quest will take you back to planets you've already been to.
Yeah.
There's she showed us a bunch of maps where it was like, okay, here you can see that there's a door here that's marked it red because you don't have the ability yet to go through that door.
That's
and obviously
cool.
That's placeholder stuff, because eventually that'll be like, oh, you need to force double jump or whatever to get through here. But it'll have an icon presumably. But
Well,
like,
that's what RE2 did. Like part of Resident
right.
Evil 2's like brilliant map was to, as soon as you hit a door that you couldn't unlock, it was like, if you needed the spade key, it's
Right.
like, yo,
So
spade
it's like
key.
that.
It's like, that's great. I shouldn't have to write that down.
Totally.
Yeah.
You can go over. You can talk to your. This demo introduced us to Cal's mentor, who is a cool woman named Saris,
yeah.
Seres, pronounced
Who's
Saris.
also who's an ex Jedi Knight. Well, they're all in hiding at this point.
Yeah.
In the
Right.
story, but yeah.
Who's like a cool black lady. Like there was a moment where it was like she was talking to Saw Gerrera, who's Forrest Whitaker, and like representation, fictional representation is not the be all end all. Like I absolutely want the sort of like representation behind the camera, so to speak, in development. But it was cool as shit for me as someone who was growing up who loved Star Wars, and Lando was it, to suddenly have like a cool Jedi Knight talking to a cool Resistance fighter about the situation, and just like, and both of them were black people. That was cool as shit for me. And also Saw's armor is just the sickest shit.
Hell yeah.
And there's also the pilot for your ship who was there, who's a new alien species, who has
Okay.
like 4 arms and a very goofy like jacket with like, it's like a silver windbreaker. It looks like he looks like a Guardians of the Galaxy character in a sense.
And
Do you know what I mean?
It feels like a character Billy Crystal would have voiced a few years ago. Like very Mike
Yes.
Wazowski. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. What if Mike from Monsters Inc. was your spaceship pilot?
Yeah.
I'm in.
Yeah. And you can talk to them, and they'll give you some more detail about the planet and what the stakes are, and like what you're off to do. And then you go and do it. And with the added, and at that point she handed the control over to Kato, and I'll note, in the meanest way anyone could ever do it, she was very nice, and it wasn't her fault, but I had noticed and tried not to complain that when I was playing through the gauntlet to learn how to play, someone had set inverted controls.
Oh my God.
And it was not a thing in the options, because this is an super early pre-alpha build or whatever.
Sure.
Just go in and change it. There was like a secret code
Right.
button thing to do that. And so we couldn't figure out how to do that. The person who knew it was off in another demo. And so when she handed the controls over to Kato, it was with an inverted camera before a platforming section. And then Kato took over to play the demo that they showed before.
Yeah, I had trouble. I also, she mentioned that in these levels that they're fairly open, and there's actually multiple paths through that maybe lead you all to the same area, but might give you, for example, you might come up behind enemies in combat if you find out a side path or whatever.
Sure.
So I see like a platform. I'm like, okay, I'll go this way, and then there's this spinning platform that you're supposed to like force stop. And first I didn't get it. I was like, I'll just time my jump right, and fail that a couple times. Doesn't fucking work. I was like, oh, right, I have that power. I stop it, get onto the thing, and then miss the jump on the other end. And then after like trying 4 times, because I'm bad at jumping apparently, I finally get there. And then she's like, okay, now we have to go back the other way because there's nothing here. I know.
And then Kato throws the controller across the room.
It was very funny.
Invert this.
But it was one of those moments where you start saying, like, okay, in the demo that we saw, everything seems super linear. Here, you can see where there are side branches where you're going to go find additional lore.
And it was like I could see where you come. Like it was not that this was a dead end. It was this was a return path for later or something.
Right.
Where I couldn't get up that way, but will eventually go down that way or something.
Totally. From watching you play, it seemed like there was a good mix of challenge, but also it's not as precise as like a FromSoft game, or
maybe
demand
demanding. I think is the more
totally.
accurate.
It actually seemed very precise, but
yeah,
the window is just wider and more forgiving.
Yeah, and I feel like the camera let go a little too easily when I was locked on.
Yeah.
And which was a problem because we had it in inverted. And I would keep like accidentally looking straight up or straight down.
Right.
Sometimes when I was panicking, I was also like, I don't play with Xbox controllers ever. Like I use a PS4 controller on my PC, and there would be like prompts and I'd be like, right, that one. Oh fuck, wait, no, button, trigger, which one's that? And I kept fucking up jumps, one grab that way in particular, until someone was like, no, that one.
That button.
This
is the button. But I think barring that stuff,
right? No, like
as someone who uses a lot of Xbox controllers, that stuff felt pretty natural.
Right.
Yeah, like it was all on me. It was just a very funny moment.
It was very funny. It was very much like a bad demo situation.
Yeah.
And bonfires.
And bonfires. So halfway
That
through,
actually respawn enemies into the world.
Yes.
And like skill trees.
Right. Also skill trees. So you get to the bonfire, which is like a meditation point, basically, and you sit down and you know it brings you to a kind of like a world of all like white and fog, and then you kind of see a weird Jedi skill tree appear that's like all curves and arcs and stuff, and it was very filled out. And she was like, "You're way more powerful than you would normally be at this point in the game." Right. In fact, one of the questions I asked her was like, "Hey, is this going to be a game where you get to the very end and you kind of have all this stuff?" And she was like, well, you have a lot of it, but not exactly. There will be room to specialize. Maybe you want to do more lightsaber. There's kind of 3 branches: lightsaber combat, or force abilities, and survival.
So that's probably like additional health, additional whatever,
jumping differently, dodges, parry stuff, who knows. And the idea that like, okay, I'm going to just max out saber, you're going to max out survival, is like, you're not going to have Dark Souls builds in this game. I don't think there's loot. I didn't see anything even close to that. You know what I mean? But I'm starting to think about this game in the realm of something like Arkham Knight, or not Arkham Knight, Arkham Asylum, or actually Arkham. What was the first really big one? Arkham City.
Arkham City, yeah.
In terms of like, okay, this is a licensed game that is trying to do a very particular like style of combat that is maybe not completely innovative, but is nailing it and is kind of presenting the people who first fell in love with Arkham Asylum maybe weren't deep Metroid Prime fans, but that was a game that learned a lot from the Metroid series and brought that in. And
or you don't think you are,
right? That's what
and
I
then
mean.
you say, "Oh, would you play a Metroid game?" Like, but then you play Batman as a Metroid game, and you're like,
oh,
okay,
I like all
and
this
it like
stuff.
opens a door to a different type of game. And like I've been frustrated by the response to Dark Souls was largely just literally copy it, put it in a different setting.
Right.
Games like The Surge, which I don't think are bad games, but I've been waiting for more games to pluck into the mainstream. And like, okay, what do you do with certain elements of this, and then how do you adapt it in a way that doesn't lose like a certain essence, but like does often what we would wish From Software would do more of, is like building in a broader window in which you're still learning the core skills, the core DNA. It's just more demanding when it's in like, I don't know, pure form or like more original form.
It's that earlier form, right? The thing there too that I think is cool is just like the stuff that they're bringing over isn't, this game is ridiculously hard. It's like enemies respawn when you go to a checkpoint, and that's like a cool way of the thing I like most about Dark Souls. One of the things I like most about Dark Souls is this idea of figuring out your route through a place, learning the environment, learning your best strategies against a set of enemies or an arena or trying to cross this fucking bridge or whatever it is, and on top of that, having limited but not consumables,
right?
Estus flasks, where you heal yourself, and anytime you go to a meditation spot or a bonfire, you get them back. And so it's like, okay, I have these resources for this run. I don't have global resources that I'm afraid of. Or I don't only have global resources. I'm going on a run. I have 3 heals. How do I get through this with just 3 heals?
And here's my guess is that for you, me, Kato, we probably won't run up against the limit in the way that we do sometimes in the Souls games. But again, the fact that it will be novel, it will be new for a lot of people to even think about that, to worry about that.
That's right.
And so the idea of seeding that to like a larger group of players, a reframing of like what it's like to play an action game, to have slightly some walls around like what you or how you have to approach a situation, is cool as hell. And like that's always like when these games are rote as shit. Like what's exciting about using a big property is like use the big property to surprise people in a different way, and that's what I'm encouraged by how people have been talking about this.
I also feel like there is something here with regards to making a Star Wars game that understands that lightsaber combat is not flailing. You can tell you can.
That was Jedi Knight, right? Like
even Jedi Knight, which I like a lot, was still I
mean, it was flailing to some extent, but it also tried to. It embodied one aspect of fighting with the lightsaber, which is more the acrobatic element, which was the agility element. It wasn't so much about combos or like feeling like very powerful. Whereas like this is like seems like it's playing down the athletic part and playing up the more like this is this is a powerful object that should be treated with a measure of respect and is able to fucking dole out some shit if you use it correctly.
Cal Kestis kills some motherfuckers. Let me tell you. People are scared of that dude. He has a lightsaber. It also seemed less annoying here. We had a little bit more dialogue. It helps that I've started to think about him as Archie. Riverdale Archie specifically.
Yeah, it's good.
It's not him.
No, different actor.
Now that I've committed to that read, it helps.
Is there a little more... I feel like what we've seen of the game so far shows so little of his character that he can potentially come across as more annoying because you don't have like context to set up who he is. Yeah. And like in a game that like gave you an hour of like, all right, like he's a naive little shithead. Yeah. And that becomes earnest as opposed to like
seeing him,
because when you watch the footage, like look at this fucking badass, and then in this cutscene, it's like
no, he's like surrounded by people who know the world more than him. He's surrounded by Saw Gerrera, by Saris, his mentor, by whatever the name of the pilot is, and all of them have almost a world weary quality. Yeah, you know what I mean.
We've been doing this a while.
Yeah, exactly.
They've seen some shit.
They're all too old for this shit.
Absolutely,
which is why they're sending him, the young buck, to go do things. Actually,
totally. The other small thing about it that I really liked, and this was in the demo from Saturday, but I just noticed it this time, is there's a moment when BD, the robot, the little droid you have, goes... So the BD will be on your shoulder, perched on your shoulder most of the time, except for when... it notices something to scan, in which case it'll like hop off your shoulder and go over to scan something, which gives you some like lore about a species or a type of enemy or a plant or whatever. Or if there's something to interact with in the environment, BD is able to slice, which is the Star Wars term for hack, into different things, and eventually gets this ability to overcharge stuff and kind of make machinery like get really powerful, which could do the one thing that happens in the game or in the demo is like turns on this like giant machine saw to saw a pathway forward for you basically, and it's a tiny little touch of characterization, but I think it's so good is BD jumps off your shoulder and like goes to plug into this thing, and Cal's response is like, "Are you sure you want to do that, BD?" It's not, "Go hack that thing for me." Yeah. It's not like, "All right, I think if you can hack this, we can move on." It's, "You, BD, you've decided to do this. Are you sure about that?" It's a relationship.
And it's also
and like
it plays. Go ahead.
Sorry, and that's like also in the like when BD goes on his own to go to these points and doesn't do anything until you like respond, basically. But it's like you have to actually hit the button after the fact to interact, so you're not accidentally opening doors or whatever. But it's still very much like BD's making the choice initially.
And it's and it seems in line with, you know, the Star Wars universe has the cinematic part of the Star Wars universe doesn't clearly answer like what are robots? Do they have sentience? Why, you know, are they all just like weird slaves that we all just laugh at? Rogue One,
or not Rogue One,
or Solo had like a really, you know, interesting arc where they tried to
to do something.
Yes,
there.
But it was an acknowledgement of like that there are more to
these are people
would have been
very
treated,
clearly
would have been treated
people.
as there's a whole rebellion, you know, and so that's messy in the Star Wars universe. But I do I like it when one of the fictions acknowledges that like that contradiction, or at least maybe ignores the shittier parts of it and says like, yeah, look, he's a character. He has some measure of personhood.
This is a partnership. The two of them.
It's a collaboration.
Totally. Also, there's like really good animations for BD constantly.
So cute.
Very cute. Lots of little like puppy dog waggles and like gets excited about stuff, gets excited about upgrades and stuff like that. So I had a great time with it. It is like becoming the game I'm most excited about out of E3 because, not because it's ambitious, but because it knows what it wants to do and seems to be executing on it.
Right.
And frankly, because like to some degree, as much as I'm like curious about how Watch Dogs hits that stuff, I am trepidatious about the way it will handle Brexit and deportation. Whereas here, I'm pretty sure they're going to handle the Star Wars stuff pretty well. And the thing that's difficult is like I do want to encourage big developers big studios and big publishers to enable developers to take big swings, but I have to in a week where like the Cyberpunk team has fucked up on like the question of like the inclusion of trans bodies in that game and the exploitation and exoticization of them and the fetishization of them. It's like, all right, I really got to trust you before you take that swing.
Right.
And so there's a part of me that's just like, yeah, the Star Wars game, I know what it is. I think they're going to be able to deliver on that thing.
You know, that studio knows what box they are in, and they're like, got it.
Yes. And that is like, it's the easiest game for me to right now be excited about. And also, I just want to play it. Like 6 weeks ago, we were like, what if they made a fucking lightsaber like Sekiro? And then they did. And they're doing it. They're doing it. Yeah. So I'm excited for that. That's next year, right? That's 2020. Is that this year?
Yeah, that's November.
Yes, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
That's cool. So
2020, different games.
I saw a licensed game today that I thought was really cool, Star Wars. You also saw a game that was a licensed property. Big fan, people love, and
I love.
You love Avengers the way I love Star Wars.
Yes, I've described my love of the MCU as like my with the way the reverence people talk, the way they react to like. The only piece of swag I'm going to keep from this E3 is like this little Avengers thing that like came with my meeting to seeing the game, because I was like, that's cool. Like that world means something to me. And so I had a chance to go not play, but to see an extended gameplay demonstration for I guess it's not the Avengers, I guess Marvel's Avengers.
Right. The Avengers is
the MCU branding, I guess.
Oh, is that?
I don't
really
know.
The
I
difference?
don't.
I was gonna say the Avengers is that spy show from Britain from the 1960s.
Also true. So the setup for this is you went into a room and there's a presentation in which they showed us the trailer from the Square Enix press conference, and then basically there were hints in that trailer that like, there were some like real-time sequences, but it wasn't clear like what that meant. And so what that meant was like actually there is a playable sort of prologue to like set up the A-Day mishap that were like this, a lot of San Francisco is like destroyed as a result of this like mysterious energy sources being used to power the helicarrier. And so what that means practically in terms of what I saw is like, Thor and Iron Man like go off to investigate this explosion that's happening over on the Golden Gate Bridge, and Thor splits off in response to a radio call from the police, and they're like, you're playing as Thor, and he's doing Thor things. He's throwing a hammer. There's a move where he can toss the hammer and hold the guy up against like the wall while he uses his fists and takes care of that. it's going so fast. They weren't, you could see some UI, like there was some powers in the corner, but it wasn't clear what exactly that meant. And then it's just cycling through the different characters. The Hulk comes over, Black Widow comes over. Black Widow just fucking pulls out 2 guns. It was like, okay.
Shoots people to death.
Yeah.
Okay.
In this case, the Taskmaster.
Okay. He dies. He dies?
Well,
She shoots him.
no, he's got a shield and she's shooting the shield.
Okay.
And then he gets under some rubble and he's like, ah.
Yeah.
So I mean, he'll be
Lucky
back.
guy.
Yeah. And that's more or less what they showed, and
Wait. What do you mean that's all they showed?
that's all they showed.
You're describing the trailer we watched.
Yes,
Yeah.
but then what if but in real time and you see the Hulk smash? Like there's no sense of the structure. There's no, it like literally ends with the same way the trailer ends, in which like, oh, and then they went away, and then someone had to reunite them. So you see,
Wait. So who's the someone?
is not revealed. The the leak or rumor ahead of
Right.
E3 was that it's Miss Marvel, a Pakistani superhero that is from like the last 10 years or so, that is very popular amongst like young comic readers. And the idea is that she's the one that's supposed to like reunite them. That is not something that they got into or explained, but there is
She's, in the comics, she's canonically like a fan of the Avengers.
which in the context of that trailer,
Right.
the trailer opens with, they say never meet your heroes.
Right.
I did, and it was everything I ever wanted. So
That's her then.
Yeah,
right.
that's
So
definitely
yeah,
her.
like that
Yeah.
that lines up with
Yeah,
that. And also is like she's supposed like associated with like what, like the West Coast Avengers or something like that.
No,
Like,
she's in Jersey City.
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
What's good? Shout out to Jersey City. I used to live in Jersey City.
So this gameplay bit like swaps between all those characters to give you like, I guess, some broad understanding of the move set. But like I don't think that's the questions people had about this game.
No, like,
the
I
questions
wanted-
people had about this game was like, what do you do?
What am I doing in hour 23?
Right.
Right.
And they've talked in broad strokes of like, oh, like we are going to have these big cinematic moments where you're playing as these characters, but also you're going to go online. You're going to play with your friends. You're going to, yes?
Am I Iron Man?
I don't know.
Are you Iron Man?
I don't know.
Can we both be Iron Man?
I don't know.
Iron Man.
Like I tried, yes?
Are you like doing the story together? Or are you just kind of doing like events in an open world?
So I had a chance to talk to the studio head of Crystal Dynamics afterwards, in which they were the first question I asked, or one of the first questions I asked was, it must be a challenge, given that although there are all sorts of interpretations of these characters, that especially given that Endgame just happened a couple of months ago, the culmination of 22 movies in which there is now a canonized, popularized interpretation of these characters by a very specific set of actors. And although it's part of the legacy of comics that like they're reinterpreted by all sorts of different artists, like it is undeniable that when for the average person you think of Iron Man, you think of Robert Downey Jr. When you think of Captain America, you think of Chris Evans. And so it's like you're presenting the Avengers right after a movie about the Avengers. There must be like not a surprise that some people were taken a little aback, given that doesn't look like the actors, the characters they've come to know. It doesn't sound like them. It doesn't look like them. And to paraphrase, he was like, well, that's true, and it has been a challenge, but we hope that when they spend more time with our characters, they'll grow to enjoy this version of them in the way they have come to enjoy the MCU version, which felt like a little bit of like an acknowledgement that some of like the memeing of this game has been. My favorite one was someone posted a screen capture of Thor from the game and wrote like, oh, I'm so happy with the version of Thor I made from the Soul Calibur 5 character creator.
Yeah.
It was just like, that is both damning and also true for some of the response. But
I mean, for me, there's an easy answer to this, which is, you know, fans of the Marvel films had no problem both enjoying Tom Holland's performance as Spider-Man while also enjoying the many performances of various Spider characters in Into the Spider-Verse, or the one in the record-breaking sales Marvel's Spider-Man on PlayStation 4 last year.
Right.
Like, there can be multiple Spider-Man.
Yes.
If we execute on it well, they'll like it.
Right.
But I think the truth is, you watched that trailer the other
and
day.
people didn't like the character
They
design,
didn't like it.
or the voice acting associated with them.
Yeah.
And so one of the most revealing
God,
parts.
why isn't this an Into the Spider-Verse game? I know because
my
it's not.
God.
Because it's not.
Oh, why did you put that in my brain?
Well, they made an Into the Spider-Verse game. The reason
I
Into the
want
Spider-Verse
it.
exists is partially because of a video game.
Yeah, but they didn't look like that.
No, I know, but
They did a multiverse. Yeah,
there was
yeah,
a
yeah,
Spider-Verse
yeah.
video game.
Yes.
After the comic run?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it was actually. What was it? Was it Web of Shadows? Was that one? What was the one that let you
Yeah,
play?
there's
As, like,
there is a noir Spider-Man you play as. There is
you
there's
play as Spider-Man 2099. You play as
it's a
Spider-Man.
good, it's a good it's a good
It's like
game.
a decent-
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like as far as those go,
But it's not the
I'm not
one-
saying it's like a, but like there is an actual
Shattered Dimensions.
there is a corporate lineage of like how stuff like that led to Into the Spider-Verse
Right,
being
right.
greenlit at Sony.
Yes.
That's interesting.
You know, and
Anyway.
I tried to ask, okay, can you give me a sense of, right, okay, so you go, he's like, okay, so you finish this sort of like tutorial element, like, then you go to a hub. And I was like, okay, and like, what do you do from there? It's like, it sounds like there are both stages in which you will play specific characters for specific reasons. So like, there are areas where we are telling a story related to Ant-Man. So you are going to play as
Hank Pym. Yeah.
This is he's not using these characters, like they haven't announced these yet. It's like there's a Spider-Man section, and like you are going to be Spider-Man. But there are also sections in which it's 1 to 4 player co-op. Anyone can join. You can swap between that. I was like, okay. It's like, but one of the things that people are trying to like, what's confusing is like, what is the level of customization here? Like, are you playing the heroes you've designed? Are you allowing people to be the hero they want to be? And he was like, well, we're going to have gear. And I was like, and I go, well, what?
that doesn't mean anything. That could mean 30 different things.
So I said,
Loot?
you probably can't answer this because you were extremely vague right now, but gear can mean something very specific.
Yeah.
And do you mean that thing or do you mean
Right.
something else? And for me, I mean, like my implication there was, because I'm doing this all around like a PR person, so I'm like trying to get some answer without like getting a PR person going like, we're not talking about that.
Yeah.
But for me, the implication there that I was trying to get at was like, is this, as some of the rumors were, like a Destiny Light, in which like there was going to be a core focus on like customizing your character aesthetically and moveset and power set.
Right.
And the way he implied back was like, yes, like that this game is going to have like a heavy focus on. He did say that the aesthetic part is a huge thing, right? Like, and that's not a huge surprise that you'd be able to like do that part. The other part is that like there's an enormous skill tree in which like, do you want to make your character long range or short range, stuff like that.
This
but then
makes
the
some
gear
sense.
the gear part was he wouldn't get into, and my interpretation of the gear part he wouldn't get into leads me to believe that the rumors are true and that this will be a loot focused game, which would explain why you're playing 1 to 4 players and probably like rerunning certain things.
Right, but even that doesn't answer the question for me, because I think about something like the Marvel Heroes game, which is sort of like had been the inheritor of the Marvel Ultimate Alliance
Right.
style of like Diablo style action RPG, but Marvel.
Mash.
Mashing buttons, you have special abilities.
There's a billion characters.
There are a billion characters in those games. I believe in Marvel Heroes, you had gear, but it wasn't like it didn't appear on your body.
Right.
And also, your attacks were basically your attacks. You could level them up. You could change. You give them the special effects and stuff. But like Hulk smash, right? In Destiny, guns shoot different. And that makes sense to me with certain characters like Black Widow,
Right.
or Iron Man. Right? You can imagine like, oh, I'm equipping a kind of like permanent laser fire beam, or like, okay, well, I'm going to equip the one that does like a big blast that does an AOE. Well, I'm going to equip the one that does like a rapid fire machine gun effect or a shotgun effect. But like, I don't know what that is for the Hulk.
Right.
I don't really know what that is for Captain America.
The Hulk gets different colored pants that give him different.
But that's one slot, right? Like,
oh, that's all the Hulk needs.
just the one slot. All right, sure. So is the idea that you'll be playing as just those characters, like in Marvel Heroes, the online one, where it's like, there's a Spider-Man, there's a Hulk.
It's unclear
there's
to me
another
if
Hulk?
like you're.
Or am I creating? Is it like DC
I don't know.
Universe
I
Online?
don't know.
Where you make
and
your
I think
own character?
I'm now getting the.
Because that's what I want. The thing I want is make again, DC Universe Online had plenty of issues, but I did love the idea of being like, I'm going to take the Batman Gadgeteer power set, and I'm also going to take the Green Lantern visible light or like a hard light stuff, and like make a character that uses the combination of those things.
Which if they end up having you play I guess maybe they could mix and match if they're allowing you to play not Iron Man, but an Iron Man as opposed to like Tony Stark
specifically.
But that is unclear. The actual, like, if you look at the trailer they showed, even the gameplay demonstration I saw, that just looks like a kind of like PS2 era like character brawler.
Yeah, it sure fucking does.
And not a particularly impressive one.
Yeah.
And if part of the reason that is true is because actually the focus of the game is like all this customizability and like a really deep sort of loot and gear layer, why would you have the first showing of this game if you're not reading all of the coverage?
Right.
If you are not like trying to read between the lines, if you're not me going like, do we mean gear or do we mean gear?
Yeah.
You would look at that trailer and go, this is going to be like a big cinematic story in which like I'm going to play this.
They're doing God of War,
but Marvel.
Right.
And with this...
Well, no, God of War also had gear, to be fair,
Yes,
right?
yes,
But
yes.
that is the vibe that I got.
Yes.
Was hero cuts, lots of cutscenes, a deep story that you're supposed to be focused on, prestige styling.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And that falls in line with Crystal's like history of the last 10 years
Yes.
doing the Tomb Raider reboots. But my suspicion is actually, functionally, this game has very little in common with what they've shown, which seems like they've set themselves up right now to turn off people who are interested in something a little bit different and looked at this character brawler and went like, nah, like I'm okay. And now if anyone that's interested in that part, which may be, you know, a much more mainstream audience, when it's revealed that, oh, actually, like this is all about like doing runs on like sections
Right. Are you
over and
ready to
over
run
again.
The Shield helicarrier again tonight.
Right.
Right? Like, I don't know. And I could be, but like, you've just told me that game. When is this game out? Next year.
May 2020.
Okay, so
Yeah.
there's
So
plenty of time.
there's a long time.
Yeah.
It was a messy pitch. I think they came away not really satisfying any sector of like someone who might be interested in this. And in my conversation with the studio head, I just got the sense that the marketing has betrayed what this game is in a way that they're now going to have to spend time that they could be getting people excited just explaining what the hell it is. And I think Star Wars ran into a very similar problem here, right? Where like the forward facing how they pitched the game was poor.
But I was hoping that Avengers would also have
It did
behind
not.
closed doors demo that wowed people.
Yeah, it did not. I remain curious, but I would say my expectations have been lowered like exceedingly.
That's a bummer.
That is a bummer.
I'm sorry for you. As
Thank you.
The Marvel fan.
I appreciate
you
that.
know?
I got Spider-Man, and that's like I loved Spider-Man, but it's going to be
years.
2 years, 3 years before
it'll be a
we see the
next gen
one.
game.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, for
At this
sure.
point.
Yeah.
I'm looking at my list, and it says you also played another thing that I think you're fond of, or
Yes.
have a history of fondness for.
Well, yes.
Or you didn't play it. Final Fantasy. Did you play Final Fantasy VII? Is that
Oh
playable?
yeah. Oh yes, I played Final Fantasy VII.
Okay,
Yes.
that was actually-
When the power came back on,
Right. They were like
they let us into a room.
and Sephiroth was
Yes.
there, and he was like, "I cut the power
I wish.
to the world with a meteor."
Yeah. So at first I saw about a 45-minute.
So that was the.
It's a good
chorus.
soundtrack. It's a
Yeah.
good soundtrack. I was in a sort of like a 45-minute presentation with I don't know his first name. Katase.
I'm pretty sure.
Apologies for not having it off the top of my head, but I didn't want to totally butcher it, and so then I just half butchered it and then punted to a Google search.
Yoshinori
Katase.
Yoshinori Katase.
In which he sort of walked through a little bit more about that game. It didn't reveal anything too specific. One thing that's I think come out since maybe the last time we talked about this game was that Jason Schreier asked, so this is episodic or multiple games. The sense is that this will end with sort of for people who play Final Fantasy VII, the escape from Midgar. Sounds like that'll probably be where this ends. And so what does that? So how many games? And Katase's answer was, well, we don't know yet. In my presentation, they said they've started building the second game already, understandably.
Yeah, okay.
I wonder if part of the reason is seeing how people respond to the first one. I think also part of it is, if you played Final Fantasy VII, the moment you leave Midgard, that world opens the fuck up.
Yeah.
in a way that it is hard for me to imagine.
I mean, there's still
It's hard.
You don't think it'll be Midgard, then is it Guard? Midgar. Then the Eastern Continent, then the Western Continent. Then you
Right,
get
but you're in an
Highwind.
airship.
Not right away. You get that car for a little while. You got to go to Cosmo Canyon. You got to go to
That's
Cosmo Canyon.
true.
You got to go to Golden Saucer. You got to do all that shit that is just driving. There's that whole like Fort Condor section where there's a weird tactics game. That's all before you get the airship.
But they can't wait to a third game to
Yes,
get
they
you
can.
an airship.
Yes, they can. You could leave that town, get the car. You could. I don't think you get the car until you beat Golden Saucer. You can do all the Eastern Continent shit, especially if they're not going to do.
You get in a car and it just turns into Final Fantasy 15.
I'd be okay
Totally.
with that. Yes,
Yes.
please.
But like, you Nibelheim, there's all sorts of stuff going on that Eastern Continent, and they could make the thing, the spoiler for the first act of that game, be in the middle of game 2 instead of at the end of game 1.
Because it sounds like that's not going to happen. There was, I think some theorizing that maybe that would be like their way of, one, now that this game is getting closer to release, like if you haven't played it, it's going to be harder to like avoid certain discussions about this game. But that second game is going to come out optimistically 3 years from now?
Sure.
Optimistically.
They have an engine. Whatever the fuck that means.
Right. So I didn't learn a whole lot from the presentation, but I did get a chance to play it, and the bit that I played was like you're going to try and set the bomb. So it seems like towards the end of like the mission that's been portrayed in a lot of the trailers, which is the beginning of the game. You are playing as Cloud and Barrett, and you go up against a bunch of small soldiers and then one of the big, like the spider mech that can like jump on the walls and stuff like that. And the combat is really fun. I think they've very cleverly split the difference on, like, I would love for there to be a $200 million game in which it has a fucking classic like turn-based action time battle menu, but like I realize that is not realistic. And I enjoy I feel like they have split it in a way that it satisfies sort of like both camps. Like it feels really good to like go in, slash a little bit with Cloud, get your meter
Your
up,
ATB up,
and then it pauses time, and you can use your attacks or you can cast spells. The nice thing is if you're like this battle really only needs me to be Cloud, but then the other characters have their meters going up, and you don't have to switch them to use their abilities.
Right.
You can just hit L2 or R2 based on whether, like, in the corner it will say like there'll be characters assigned to those buttons. So you can just do that. It pauses the action. You can assign the action, and then the character will just do that on their own, and then warp you right back to like the main character that you're playing as. There's like I don't know that there's a whole lot to say, but I'm like the things I'm interested in were the things they're not talking about yet, which is playing Resident Evil 2 and then looking at this game is so interesting to think about the different ways to revisit a work in which RE2 is not one-to-one, but like is in spirit one-to-one of taking a thing from roughly the same era and saying, what would that look like now? And while there are changes like the way Mr. X works, in which he truly does follow you, are smart ways to accomplish what you couldn't have done with technology back then, in which the rooms were discrete, in which the game could not simulate...
Literally couldn't work that way.
Couldn't simulate a character in other rooms while you were there. But had the technology existed, it is reasonable to conclude that they might have done something like that. And so I felt like RE2, what it was often doing was not radically changing what that game was. To a fault, I wish they threw out the sewers and the lab and just did something different in that part of the game. Or reinvented them in a way. There are
I had a
parts
better
I liked,
time with those, but I get you.
but whereas like
Claire's run through in that is definitely, having now seen Leon's, Claire's stuff there is way better. Not way better. I mean, it's still the source, it's still the labs, but it's
just
the
the police station is such a
it's
highlight.
so good.
And the other areas are just not nearly as interesting, and I wish they had spent some time just rethinking those. But it was the reason they didn't was because the things that they changed, the things they enhanced, felt like they were within the scope. It's sort of like when someone does, or we're doing a game with an 8-bit style, but then there's like extra technical flourishes of things the hardware couldn't accomplish. So it feels in the spirit of it, even if it's not necessarily hardware constrained. And that's what RE2 felt like. It was like, it's in the spirit of what this game is about without fundamentally changing what it is. And because of that scope, that limited scope, it felt just like they could so dial in on certain things, and it was a really, beautiful way to revisit something that you don't see done very often and executed to that degree. Whereas Final Fantasy VII is just something fundamentally different, where they are saying, we are going to revisit this, expand it. We are going to dive deeper. It's like, well, what does that mean? Does that mean exploring, is that filling in bits that the fandom has wondered out? Is that the designers revisiting things like, well, we didn't get a chance to do this the first time around. Like, here are storyboards of
that we thought we wanted to do, but
ran out of time and money and resources and all sorts of reasons. And I just don't know. Like, they're not talking about those parts. Like, we didn't. Some of these presentations had Q&As. Ours did not. I just wrote down on mine, like, does she die?
Who could say?
And I'm just so curious how they are going to, like, from their perspective, it must be, I suspect it must be tempting to reinvent, not change things to surprise the player. Or aren't they not? Or are they not doing that? Right. Are they going to play it like relatively straight, in which...
what if they did both? What if there was a select at the beginning that was like, is this your first time through? Or are you a returning player? And if you're a returning player, you're going to get a different experience. We're not going to say what it is.
Yeah.
Don't do that. That seems like a lot of work.
Yeah.
But it'd be dope.
Yeah, and so like those are the questions that they are just not getting into, and may just not get into because that'll be sort of a surprise for players. But like the approach to revisiting an old work, both for one that was so defined by the culture around it by fans.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm so curious what Square thinks fans want and what fans think they want.
And also what they do want, but might not know they want.
And the tension between those things is like pretty profound, and I don't think I got much closer in
10 minutes.
In 10 minutes, yeah, in answering those things, because there just wasn't much dialogue. I heard Barrett say,
suck on this
a couple of times.
Did the robot in fact suck on this, and this being like a big plasma energy
No,
ball?
unfortunately not.
Did
we did watch.
You?
Huh?
Did the robot beat you?
No, of course not.
Okay.
I will say, like during the presentation, there was a lot more dialogue with Barrett, and there were several sequences in which, and this made me curious about where they'll go with it, in which I do think that I know there were some concerns that Cloud talking seems to maybe undersell the nature of his character and his like dismissive attitude, just as a result of talking as opposed to interpreting through text and limited polygons. And like I actually think the performance I saw in like the 25 minutes or so they played, like he's dickish in the way that like
suck?
Yeah, he sucks.
Okay.
Like he's an asshole.
He's
and
Cloud.
actually there's a couple of sequences in which Barrett calls him on his shit, to the point of like, can't you feel the planet dying, you fuckwad? Like basically like just really calling, and him just like, you know, well, if he was to wave his hair, that would be Squall. That's Final Fantasy VIII.
Yeah.
Squall waves his hair. Yeah. Cloud does not. But there are like sequences in which Barrett's character, who is someone who cares deeply about saving this planet, who cares deeply about, because of his daughter, to go to the extreme measures that he is choosing to do. And you know, the tension early in Final Fantasy VII is whether, you know, is Cloud someone here for the paycheck, or is Cloud because of Tifa and blah blah blah, he's actually invested in the mission. And I did like the fact that there were moments where, but the problem is I don't remember, like maybe something very similar happened in FF7.
I think it did.
But having voice to it, having a more dynamic camera adds a levity to it, even if I currently remained sort of unswayed by the portrayal of Barrett.
Yeah. I am so curious about that thing to the degree that I don't even want to see it at this point.
Right.
Like I know that curiosity is going to make me buy that game, even if I bounce off of it 10 hours in. Mm-hmm. But my guess is, at this point, I'm going to want to see it through to the end. In the same way that even if these most recent Star Wars movies are bad, I would want to see them all the way through, just because I have that in me. It's such a key part of my childhood.
Like it's one of those. I just need to know.
I just need to know. I just do. Do you have any Final Fantasy VII questions, Kato?
I did have one about when you said you could switch to the other characters in battle. Mm-hmm. Can you just play as Barrett? Can you just like stick with him the entire time, or will it force you back to Cloud eventually?
So you always revert, at least in the demo, you revert to Cloud when you're running around.
Right.
I don't know if you'll be able to like swap who's the primary party,
right,
or the leader, as like your party expands, because at the point of the game that we're in, like you're just starting to expand that party.
You couldn't remove Cloud from the party in 7, could you?
Not that I know of.
I don't remember specifically enough.
So.
And I get that the story is like Cloud
I get what you're
focused,
saying.
but like in battle, if you wanted to just be one character,
Yeah, no, I mean,
mostly,
in battle, like there's, you still want to use the other characters,
Sure,
right?
sure.
So like, and basically what that means is like they will attack by default,
Right.
And then you basically are using their special abilities. Because I don't think they'll use that. Like I think the meter will just fill and just sit there
Right.
unless you prompt them to. So yeah, like there was part of the battles where it's like, oh, actually this is mostly long range. I'm just gonna stick with Barrett, and then as soon as I see that meter pop, hit R2, have him do the whatever, and you move on. So
Right.
yeah, and also they the sort of hybrid combat system they have is largely sort of like to placate like old school fans, but they have a mode where you can turn it into just a pure action game, and it won't stop. And you can, I think, assign like default characteristics for the other players. So maybe actually like that version where you get rid of the turn-based stuff,
Right.
the characters will just go do shit based on like what you've assigned them
Right.
to do, and then the game just never slows down. So if you want to play it as like that, there is an option to be just like a pure kind of hack and slash sort of game.
I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I'm excited to see
Same.
more for sure.
Yeah. Totally. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I feel purely excited to see more from at this point. I saw Outer Worlds. I enjoyed that demo.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'll set up the demo for you a little bit. Let me bring up my notes here.
Hit me.
So Outer Worlds, the pitch that the cutscene or that the trailers have made, including this most recent one, is pretty simple. The space is being colonized by giant corporations, by mega corporations, specifically by a group called the Corporate Board. You are part of a colonization effort and a part of a kind of crew of colonists who gets frozen, or you're in cryosleep, and the ship goes off course and gets lost for 80 years, 100 years, or whatever. And then a mad scientist finds you, and rescues one colonist from this group, and brings you out because he needs someone who can like shake things up. The Corporate Board, it has turned out, mega corporations have reduced everything down to kind of commodity form. Everyone is judged constantly, on their work performance. The worst thing in the world is to be unemployed. How dare you? It's a betrayal to the code. Organized crime elements have sprouted up out of the kind of trying to find loopholes in the corporate code to run life a different way. You have people who are rebellious, and they've gone off to kind of start their own kind of colonies of sometimes bandits, sometimes farmers, whatever. And you wake up and go into all of this in this kind of retro-futuristic sci-fi adventure. And the most recent a trailer was like, everything kind of seems like it's locked in stasis. The Corporate Board has this like control over everything until you show up, and then you can be the destabilizing force. And maybe you're a hero, maybe you're a villain, maybe you're a psychopath, quote unquote. And you are the person who is going to, unleash hell, whether that's through investigating the corruption of the Corporate Board or through, murdering your way across space to change the order of things and to shift the world away from corporate control.
Okay.
The mission we saw today took place on a new planet they haven't shown before. It's not No Man's Sky, right? It's not 1,000 planets. It's probably not even 10 planets.
They've like specifically made sure to put
yes.
In perspective, like it's also not Fallout, right?
Right.
In which like
it's smaller than that.
It's not small, but it's not Fallout big.
Yeah, it's not. You're not going to get 80 hours out of this thing. It is a first-person shooter RPG, like the most recent Fallout games. Today's demo that I saw takes place on the planet Monarch, which is called Monarch because it was originally called Terra 1. It was the first colony candidate where they're going to try to terraform it and turn it into like the new Earth. And in the process, they fucked up and they made all of the animals really big, and those huge animals destroyed all of the corporate infrastructure. And so the corporation started to leave. I never saw them, but they were like monstrous. It's like
Monarch is the fictional cryptozoology agency in the recent Godzilla films.
Ooh,
so I'm thinking
kaiju.
What?
They could be. So one company stayed behind.
Okay.
And that company's name is Monarch, which is why the planet. They're like,
Oh.
through a loophole by being the last corporation there, they get to be like, yeah, it's our planet now legally, and that has caused a big downturn with the rest of the corporate board. Like Monarch is in the corporate board, but they're kind of infighting among the different mega corporations. So the mega corporations have blockaded the planet, which means that organized crime has sprung up because someone's got to smuggle shit through this blockade.
Sure.
And so there is a criminal organization that has a front called Sublight Salvage. That is really, they're a salvage operation, but what they're salvaging is goods from other planets that they're actually just delivering through the blockade. And so the leader of that group, who's this woman named something, I have it, something Mallon, Catherine Mallon or something, wants you to go break into. So there, you know, borscht, the soup. Borscht is like a
Kato?
Yeah.
Borscht is like a Russian sour soup, an Eastern European soup. This world has something called borst that is like boar, like pig, boar borscht. It's very gross where it comes from. Dude. I'm not going to get into it.
Why?
Because it's too gross. It's not waste, but it's gross.
Oh.
The boars don't die, and it's not milk. And that's all I'm going to say.
Oh, well, that'll...
I feel like you've given us not enough information. Just say it.
They have tumors that you open up and the borscht comes out.
That's somehow worse than I was.
I told you.
But you're with me, Kyle,
Yeah,
though, right? Like
there was one option left, or maybe two.
No, it was not waste, I said. And
No,
there's still other options.
There's still other options.
Yeah, okay, well, yeah, you're right. Yes. That's not waste.
And that's why it was like you just need to.
Yeah, you have to say it this way because
close the loop.
what we're thinking is
so. She wants you to go there and deal with the leader of that group.
Okay.
And like, basically like take over his local territory. There's like some infighting.
Stop them from making.
There's a relationship.
Soup.
There's like a third party. There's some sort of. Anyway, so you go in and they do the cyberpunk thing a little bit of like you can go in guns blazing or you can go in sneaky. And they go through it, and they show you, okay, you can hack here, you can, fight here. You could, if you had a higher charisma score, a higher intimidation score, you can intimidate this person. There's a moment when they're like, and this is something that goes back to the original Fallout. One of the things in the original Fallout was that, or maybe it was Fallout 2 that did this. If you have like a low intelligence score, certain options are grayed out for you because your character isn't smart enough. In this, they've codified that as dumb answers, quote unquote, which is like, yeah, the eyebrow raise, exactly. If your character is a low intelligence, that's an option for you, where it's a goofy answer, basically. And if it's super low, you're locked into that one. So one of them was like, you get to an area where you're looking down on the factory, the Borst factory, and there's like some robot guards plus like some human workers. And one of the ways you could try to convince them to leave by being like, hey, Mr. Borst, or whoever the leader of that group is, wants you over for dinner. And there's rumors of him being a cannibal. And so, like, you can scare them off, basically. They're like, you know what? Fuck this. I quit. Or the quote-unquote dumb answer was like, there's a grease leak in the factory. You all better leave or else you're going to get real greasy. And it's a bummer that it's called the dumb answer and not, like, the goofy answer, like some other version.
I was going to say, like,
a funny idea.
Yes.
And I wish it wasn't just tied to. I wish it was like, Fallout sometimes does a thing where early on you can take a perk that's called like Wild Wasteland, where it's like, make this game goofier, add like weird aliens and pop culture references. And I wish it was the box I could check to get those answers.
Just call it Wild.
Totally, just or something.
Wild
you know
card.
What I mean? The
wild card actually would work.
That would work perfectly.
Okay, I'm just going to fucking throw it out there and let's see what happens.
Totally. There's some really cool writing in it throughout in terms of just like. One of the biggest things for me that I felt was really cool was you had two companions with you. It's been a while since I played a role-playing game on a console or a computer in which I had companions who were bantering with each other about the things we were doing.
Skyrim?
Post Skyrim. No, I'm thinking like it felt a little bit
that's
less
what
like
I mean.
that.
Like that's I'm trying to last time.
It's like the Dragon Age Inquisition or Mass Effect.
Sure.
Mass Effect Andromeda did it. I just don't think it did it particularly well. But it's been years, a couple of years since that, and a lot of the RPGs I've played recently, things like Witcher 3, things like Anthem, aren't doing that. Even Fallout 76 certainly did not, right? And so the takeaway ended up having, you go and you meet the guy, he gives you the choice. He goes, actually, she's bad.
Did they pick the greasy option?
They didn't. They picked the one that was like, he's gonna eat you.
All right, yeah.
So
I want to know what the response
me too.
is. Do they?
So you get through, you stealth past some people. I'm also skipping some stuff around, like weapon upgrades.
Sure.
Because the takeaway here is like, you played this game before.
Right.
What's different is the setting. What's different is it's a space game. You're in space. There's a spaceship. There's like the blockade stuff. That's the stuff that I think is like that worked for me pretty well. Right. The big confrontation at the end, he goes, what if you and I worked together actually and screw her? And you're like, oh, no, screw you. Or like, no, what if you both work together?
Did you hear about that grease?
Right. Did you hear about that grease? If that had shown back up, that would be great. And it's all the game it is. Like, it's all one of those. It's all a Fallout first-person style RPG.
But that's in the context of Bethesda having gotten away from that shit, even in their own game.
Exactly.
76 doesn't have it.
Totally.
And there's some really got away from that.
Yeah, there's some stuff here that does feel genuinely cool and unique. I think the captain, your character, one of the ways that you can build them isn't just like hacker, shooter, melee, charmer. There's a specific skill set that's like leadership that is about it's about being Captain Picard versus being Captain Kirk, right? Okay. Captain Kirk throws fists, gets down there. Captain Picard's a leader. Captain Picard doesn't know how to hack a computer, but his crew does. You have a fighter, and so the leadership skill lets you get access to the abilities that the rest of your crew has, both in conversation checks. So like, let's say you have a hacker in your group, instead of being like, you go hack this, it's just like, you get that skill point. Past Fallout games have definitely fucked that up, where it's like, I have a really great hacker with me. I can't open this fucking door because my hacking skill isn't good enough. Right. Why can't this person whose entire thing is they're a hacker just do this for me? Right. And to some degree, they've changed that over the years, but it has not been consistent. But that also includes things like stealth skills. Like there's a bit where you're trying to sneak past these robots, and because you have like a big game hunter who's really stealthy with you, your stealth score goes up. And that's specifically because that character build is about getting the most out of your crew, which is a neat thing. Like I think that's a unique thing. The companions you all have like specialty skills that they can use. You can tell them to use, like a Mass Effect character having abilities, not like a whole wheel of them, but like a signature ability, and you can kind of call on them to use it, and it does like the kind of VATS cutscene style thing. And that's cool. It has a thing where instead of having VATS, it has like time dilation because you're coming out of cryo sleep for so long that you can slow down time. And when you do that, you can scan enemies and you'll be able to read like, here's what their role is. Here's how much HP they have. Here's what they're weak to. Here's like a little factoid about them that's pulled from a hat, which is happening everywhere right now. That's,
Factoids.
Trend
of E3.
Hey, that person's a person. And then you shoot them.
I was Cyberpunk. That person's a
no. In fact, the opposite of treating people like people. So I had the interview afterwards, and it was a totally good conversation with someone who's like a quest designer on that game. And a lot of the kind of conversations I ended up having were things that, like the one I talked about before. Hey, how eager or how willing are you to cut off content from a player? Right. And the answer was like, not really. Like occasionally there'll be really big main story choices. Or I asked about like inter-party conflict, characters who don't want to do stuff. And the guy I was speaking to was like, yeah, towards the end game, there's like one character you can kind of piss off because you've kind of gone down a road he's really opposed to. But if you pass the charisma check, you'll be able to get him back on board. And I, as a player, am just losing interest in that style of game.
It's one of the reasons I loved, one of the things I loved about Vampire from last year, in which there were a series of conversations in which I gave an answer that wasn't an intelligence check. It was just part of a dialogue wheel. And there was one specific moment where I gave kind of a snotty answer because I wasn't taking the conversation particularly seriously. Because usually when games like this are like, this is a serious conversation. This is a choice. You need to think about what's happening because consequences will sprinkle out. Right. I just was being snarky, and then the quest line just died. Right. And it didn't tell me it was going to happen. I was so mad at first because I was like, why wouldn't game? I would have thought about this, but actually, and I've written about this since, it's like what was brilliant about it was because it didn't communicate that it was a capital C choice. Right. I made the honest answer. I made the answer that I wanted to make in the moment, but I would have made something more conservative, something that kept the quest alive if I had been told, like, one thing is going to stop this here, the other thing's going to keep it going. And I liked the fact that the game said, like, no, like, this person is actually mad at you. And fuck off. And just, like, big X goes over the quest on the screen. I was like, fuck. fuck? But like I look back on that, even though I was mad at the moment, with a deep sense of satisfaction for like how that so defined a specific playthrough of that game.
Right. Well, and for me, the other thing here is just like there was a time when what I wanted was, one, a game with a bunch of content to consume, and so please don't lock anything off from me. Mm-hmm. But two, so those sort of like small hits of like, oh, my character is doing it slightly differently because I have the hacking skill and you have the engineering skill, and so those are different. And you fucked with the valve and I hacked the valve, and that still felt distinct enough for me to feel like we were playing our own unique paths. One, that doesn't feel that distinct to me anymore. And then two, it feels more and more like I'm not as interested in that style of player centricity. I think it's really hard to completely break away from player centricity in games. Right. The games are AAA games at places like E3 are products that people want us to spend money on, and the vast majority of players want games that make them feel good about being the player. And being the
they don't want to be told, I paid for content, why are you blocking me from content?
But I more and more want to hit brick walls in games. Yeah. And so one of the questions I ended up asking was like, hey, in a lot of the recent marketing material, a lot of the trailers, it's like, take down these fucking corporations. And I kind of, I asked it kind of circuitously, but like, how do you figure out ways to make interesting choices inside of that very limited like goal? If you're going to be the character who like shakes things up, who like calls out the corporations and what they're doing, but you have an audience that's really interested in like making the freedom of choices, how do you like line up that ethos? And his response was, you got to hear both sides. Was like, the game is about you don't need to go against the corporations. Like, yeah, that's what the trailer kind of suggested, but really you could go into a town and be like, you know what, things here are working pretty good actually, and I'm gonna like defend the corporate interests against the raiders who are outside or whatever, because this is a good corporation where things are going well, and it's more about like, hey, judging each thing on its own. I want to be like, this person had like some really good answers about some other stuff. Yeah. The process of like figuring out
they're
the
blockade. Not like centrism is great.
No, 100% not. But like in that moment, it was like, this is that game. This is the game where you roll into town, the marauders who are sympathetic because of reasons X, Y, Z, but are too aggressive and are too violent, are up against the corporation who are oppressive because of X, Y, Z.
Back to that the quote we were talking about from a couple of days ago. That was
Avalon? Yes.
Yeah, in which he's like, I'm asking questions and then asking questions.
Or to the Ubisoft blog that was like, we're trying to show 360 degrees of a problem.
In which like the idea is representing all viewpoints, thus landing with, or letting the player choose the viewpoint.
Right. And I want developers, I'm excited when developers choose some viewpoints.
Right.
Which frankly is part of why I'm so fucking frustrated with the Cyberpunk stuff in this last 48 hours. First, the revelation of the inclusion of that really transphobic poster, and then now there have been a couple of interviews with the artist who made that poster that you can listen to the show yesterday to get more details on the basic issue. But then there were interviews that went up on Polygon and then on Eurogamer today, in which they say like, here is the message of the game is like, consumerism fucking sucks. And human bodies.
The artist is a woman.
Is a woman. Yeah, is a woman.
I just want to make.
I believe a cis woman. Yeah. Her whether she was cis or trans was not brought up in either of those interviews, and so I believe a cis woman. But regardless, the position that she was taking was, this transphobic poster is in this game because one of the messages of the game is that, corporate power and capitalism commodify sexuality and commodify bodies. But the way that answer came across, in which she's referring to things like people in between male and female, and not in a way that was about like gender fluidity or about people who are non-binary, and also non-binary explicitly means not between. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
it's a singular thing.
Absolutely.
It is not.
Or at least there are some folks who do feel like they flow between male and female, or are somewhere in there. But many non-binary people explicitly don't want to be told, or are
it's not between. Not, it's not between two poles.
They are not between 2 points. Exactly. A lot of I'm not nitpicking the language here, but the ways in which her response was, the artist's response was like, here is what our ideology is what I want from developers, but the specifics of that argument were just like so frustratingly bad and doubled down on stuff that was dehumanizing and fetishizing about like her gaze of like trans women's bodies and of that specific body in particular that was just like so disappointing, because again, I want developers to take big swings, but I want them to do it with the knowledge and the like care that it requires. And I want them to do things like say, here is the vision of the game. I want to be, that is what excites me, is when a developer says, this game has a vision. It is not pretending to have a 360-degree view of things, even though you're always going to be the person who holds a gun, even though you're always going to be the person who is the action taker. And so Outer Worlds bugged me because it's this old fucking thing. It's this old design that I will probably still play and probably get some enjoyment of, but I'm going to enjoy it the way I enjoy a burger from the diner that I go to, and not like, wow, this is a new fun experience.
Right.
And I'm frustrated by Cyberpunk because Cyberpunk wants to be, or is positioning itself as if it is like the hot new shit, as if they're like really pushing out new ideas and are willing to take a fucking stand on this stuff, but they're doing it in a way that is not particularly, not just sensitive, but thoughtful about the issues, the complexities of the issues that are out there. Like that answer today frustrated me because it felt like a 101 answer to like a senior level advanced course problem, which is the sexualization of trans bodies and queer bodies cannot just be like, well, I think all bodies are sexy. Like that doesn't work. Like it is so much more. If you have skin in the game, you have so much, you know that there is so much more complexity to that. And yeah, so that is my takeaway from the world of first-person action RPGs here at E3 2019. I don't know. Is there anything else we saw today?
Kyle, you played Ghost Recon, right? I know you didn't have the best teammates, so it wasn't the best experience, but was there anything interesting, like even within that?
Not really. It was the same demo that we saw with Rob.
Did you do better?
At the shooting? Sure. That game's got bad cover system.
Yeah, you mentioned that you didn't like that part. Why?
You have to like push up against a wall for it to click in, but then you can't really tell if you're in cover.
I hate games that's their approach to cover.
Like,
just give me a button.
And then like
so that I know I am
I'm like stuck in.
I would love it.
And like it's particularly frustrating because it's a lot of what we were doing in that mission in that demo was stealth. So like I want to know that I'm hidden behind this box and not like going to be spotted because I'm a little too far out. Right. And like you
can't. Which if it was hit A to go and cover, all right, the game is registering that I'm in cover.
Yeah. And like like there was no way to like go up to a corner of a wall or anything and like do the peek around, because you would just keep walking. So like once I like walked off the wall into an enemy and like was able to take them down fast enough, but otherwise was spotted. Right. And it was really, it doesn't feel great. Like, and that's unfortunate because Ubisoft's a million different studios, but like it definitely feels like they're using things between it feels like they share ideas sometimes, and it's like it's got some of the feel of like for example the cover system that they use in The Division is one that they like began with back in the that Splinter Cell game where
Blacklist
Chaos
or
Theory?
No, before those.
Like original Xbox?
No, wait.
Blacklist was the last one.
No, it wasn't the last one. It was like in the middle. Conviction or something?
Oh, the one that had the big letters up on the building?
2010 Conviction.
That one has what is essentially the same cover system that like they use in The Division now. Right. And that cover system actually I really enjoy because not only do you stick to walls, but if you look at another wall and you hold the cover button, you run to it in like a,
It's binary. Yeah. Like it's like from here to here, and then I'm in a concrete state.
But it's also not binary enough to where you hit the button and you are like, I'm going to flip the cover switch.
Right.
Yeah. So, that was frustrating to play. It was just it feels weird for a game that seems to be a lot about hiding and taking synchronized shots with your team, and like that was also another thing that like didn't happen just because of the people I was playing with. It's a 4-person demo with one of the devs or one of the workers at the booth and 3 other people, and the 2 people that we were with just like were not paying attention to the poor guy who like had to ask him multiple
Yeah.
times to like, come on,
Please
we're
come
going
over here.
this
Please
way,
come over here.
please. Like, all right.
That's too bad.
Yeah, which was unfortunate. But
Was
like,
it enough that you like are curious to play it when it comes out?
I don't know. Like, I think. So I didn't really talk about this a lot, but when Rob played it, they did the secondary thing where they go out and basically do. It was that robot that he mentioned that he kept dying. And when I was
they
like,
ran,
"Get
they
the
ran out of
tomatoes."
grenades or whatever.
Yeah, and like, it felt like almost like a public event in Destiny, and it feels like that's kind of how they're setting up this island. Is like there'll be things that you can just go do with your friends and
In
like,
between missions or on the way to a mission.
right, like that's just not organically in. Yeah.
Did they talk about the way missions are located in this game to y'all? Because when I saw the pitch,
it was very much. Here's the thing that I don't understand is how we get on the path that we start the mission on.
Yeah.
But like we infiltrate this facility. You get up to.
But I mean before that stuff. Before
but
you go talk to the woman.
Here's the thing: when you do talk to the woman, there's a dialogue choice that then puts you in like a new mission, basically.
Right. Because you're not in a mission before that. That's
No.
the thing. So the way that they explained this a couple months ago is that you will get. It's almost more like the Far Cry 5 situation of you will get tips in the world about there being like something like. So, for instance, in that one, it was like, yeah, I heard that there was like a drone research base in the Green Forest or the North Forest.
It doesn't put like a question mark on the map, though?
It does not put
Does
a
it
question
mark
mark
down anywhere, like in a notebook, like, hey,
I
by
think
the
it
way,
does- it
you've
does
heard
that.
about
Yes,
this?
it does that.
Or
There's like a list of
something
those
like that,
things.
yeah.
But over to the side in your map, it'll be like, yeah, there might be a drone thing in the North Forest.
Okay.
So you go to the map, you drop a waypoint, you go investigate the North Forest. But it is not, and then when you get there, you find her. She's already there in the world, and the mission triggers when you talk to her. Everything up until that point is the open world dynamic shit. Where like, yes, there's a base there that has defenses.
Can you just go? Could you not talk to her and just go fuck around in that base? Like,
Yeah,
how does
totally.
the, okay.
You can kill everybody in that base.
That's what
yes.
the two people I was playing with were doing.
Right.
And, like there was like a very clear path that we were like trying to sneak around, take
Right.
out only the people we needed to take out,
Right.
and they kept like running around the perimeter and getting into fights because that's what they wanted.
I wonder how the
do.
game world responds to the idea that, okay, let's say you dropped a waypoint.
Yeah.
You come in behind that structure. The quest giver is on is not near you. You clear out that place. Then when you talk to the quest giver, does it just repopulate that place again? Or is it like, cool, yeah, you picked up the data pad or whatever? Like, I just wonder how that stuff, given the lack of direction they're giving you as a player.
I think part of that is so what happens in this one specifically is that the mission on the way out, you're actually carrying her out of the compound, is that it populates it did repopulate with the enemies called the wolves.
Yeah, the wolves show up in that case.
Right,
Like that's the thing.
okay.
You talk to her, and then she is like, "Before we go, we have to deactivate these bombs, or whatever, or you have to place the bombs." Or
No, you have to deactivate the She's like it's like proprietary batteries for the drones or
That's what
something
it
that
is.
they have to
Yeah.
like sabotage.
And so
But-
you go and do that,
Yeah.
and then you come back to her a second time, and you talk to her, and then the wolves come in,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I
Like-
wish this had been like revelatory, and you would have been like, I wish you were gonna come back and been like, Rob's a schlub, I'm a badass.
I mean, yes, still.
Wow.
But for different things, I didn't get to fight I really wish that the robot bit was in our demo, but it wasn't, unfortunately.
Yeah, totally.
I wanted to fight it.
God.
Um,
We also saw a game called Kill Squad in the Indiecade booth,
Yes.
which is in early access this summer on Steam.
Right.
Um,
How do we?
it's like a 4-player action RPG.
Yeah.
You know what it reminded me of
Like-
was Helldivers.
Yes.
It reminded me of Helldivers.
I was thinking of Alien Swarm, but there was also Melee in here, so it was a little
Yeah,
different,
so it
but
was like class based, and you get objectives on a proc gen map. I've looked up some of the stuff that they didn't tell us necessarily.
Right.
You're kind of like a space bounty hunter in a sci-fi future. I was playing a robot with a plasma gun. You were playing kind of like
I was playing Jason.
You were playing Space Jason. You were really playing Jason X.
Yeah, I was playing Jason X. This is what Jason did after Jason X. It's
Exactly.
Just living in space.
And then
with a big
hammer. Yeah. And then it's like
character.
an action RPG. We play with controllers.
Yeah.
One cool thing with it is that every mission you do, you level up. And
Right.
so it reminded me of a MOBA in that sense, where you're like choosing your ability upgrades in each mission. I don't know what the bigger picture of progression is. I don't know if there are. It looked like there were skill trees and stuff like that, and like gear and stuff in the
Right.
in the inventory and skill screens.
Yeah.
But like you would level up and you'd be like, all right, do I want to upgrade? For me, I had like an electric fence I could toss up, like a just not a full fence that was electrified,
Right.
just like floating electricity.
Right.
I had like a plasma ball I could shoot that did a big AOE, and I had a heal I could drop like a healing.
Oh,
thing.
thank you for those. I
Yeah,
was wondering
I
where
did
those
my
are coming
best.
from.
And so, for instance, as I leveled up, I would get an option where it'd be like, do I want one of the ones I got was like the electric fence would shoot when someone triggered it, like a big attack. Another time it was like the ball that I shot, the like plasma ball would have two like pilot balls around side of it that like also did damage.
Nice,
and
yeah.
the big final one I got that got us through that final boss fight was when I dropped my healing kit, my med kit on the ground, and someone picked it up. It did an AOE heal, and that is what kept me alive at the very end.
Absolutely. I had a melee character that had similar, the progression. My abilities were a taunt, which would have all the enemies in a certain radius like attack me.
Yeah.
And then a spin move, classic barbarian, like a Diablo whirlwind situation. And the one move that would stun enemies, where I would jump really high in the air and like come down with the hammer and then be stunned for like 3 seconds. And then one of the upgrades was like when you do the yell, you also give allies a boost for 10 to all their damage for 10 seconds after you yell, as well as taking aggro. Or like at the very end, I got like it was actually an additional ability where I could just at every like minute or so give everyone shields where everyone was immune.
Yeah.
And that was really
Yeah.
it was fun to like on the fly pick what I felt was going to be really useful given like the swarms of enemies we were facing and things like that.
That was like the coolest thing for me. Was I could imagine there being a situation where you go into a map and you realize like, oh wow, this is a map where a mission where I'm going to need a lot of AOEs versus here's one where I'm going to need like some turrets or whatever that ability tree looks like. And so being able to do that on a per map basis is really cool.
Yeah. Totally.
I think that's kind of it. You saw Psychonauts 2?
Yeah,
today?
which
we talked about.
Yeah, I liked the first Psychonauts a lot. I am glad they're making another one. It looks incredibly creative from an artistic standpoint, and I'm glad the gameplay part is catching up. Like the platforming looks all right, the combat looks all right. I don't need that stuff to be great. I need it to be good, and it seems like it's that. And I laughed, I chuckled. It's like it's
that
very
part of its
funny.
job. It's very funny. Yeah, totally. I'm gonna wrap back around briefly to the Cyberpunk thing because I was like, my brain is like continuing to go down the like, well, maybe there's something I didn't hit here, which is if you read the interview with the artist, she makes the case that this is satire. This is in the game because we think that this is shitty and that you, the player, are supposed to understand that it's shitty. And it's one more aspect that's showing you how people are oppressed in this world. And the thing that I really want to underscore is if that's the case, the way to do that is not simply to kind of reiterate, or not reiterate, but to include the same style of harmful material that already exists in the real world. That's not satire. You don't just replicate it and say, but here it's bad. You have to actually interrogate it and make it key. If there had been a mission that was like you're talking to the trans model or you're playing as the trans model whose body was objectified and they have like a really well-written story and a mission with great performance that is about that objectification, that is about the lack of control of your image and of the way your body is sexualized, that is about fetishization, which is what the artist is saying the inclusion is supposed to be about. Maybe if it's well executed. But when it's just tossed in there the way it was, and then doubly so when that image shows up in an actual piece of marketing for the game, because the reason people found it was it's in the background of this NVIDIA shot.
Right.
When that's not an asset that's been like marked and been like, hey, let's make sure this doesn't show up.
Because people don't have the context.
People don't have the context. if there had been that context and if there had been care taken, then maybe we sit down and get to have that conversation. But when it happens like this, it feels thoughtless and negligent and doesn't feel like it's something that's being handled with care. So I just wanted to wrap back around and lay that back out in this way, because I think there are complexities to the question of how do you represent oppression. Because you've also heard me on this podcast be like, I'm really bored with the mages are queer people or people of color, or that style, or like the X-Men are just stand-ins.
Right.
Because in truth, I, as a black person, can't shoot laser beams from my eyes. And in fact, when you look at things like the testimony about the killing of Michael Brown, it is explicitly the ways in which black bodies are framed as mutant bodies, are framed as demonic bodies, that violence is justified. And so I am very particular and like frustrated by works that do the thing of being like, hey, this is a fictional stand-in for real marginalized people. So I do want there to be works that lean into telling the real stories of marginalized people directly instead of by analog. But when you do it like this, it comes across to me, and again, I don't have this particular skin in the game. I'm a queer black man, but I am not a trans person. I wouldn't like speak for trans folks. Though what I am trying to do is raise the voice and the voices of and the perspectives of trans folks who've reached out to me and talked to me about this issue in the last 48 hours. Like, you have to do it right if you're going to walk down this path. In the same way that if you include the slave trade or sex trafficking or honestly like murder, in a game, you should be thinking about those consequences. Like, and there are times when this game seems like it wants to do that stuff, and it's frustrating when it is. I mean, today Call of Duty came out, or Activision came out and was like, we're going to walk back some stuff in Call of Duty Modern Warfare. We're rethinking some of the more troubling elements of the game. And I hope that that's something that CD Projekt Red does. It is not too late for that game to bring on more consultants, to bring on a more diverse writing team to revisit that stuff. There are people out there who do that work, and I hope that they pay them and bring them in to do it, because I want that game to be the good version of, we look at the world and we see commercialization, we see commodification, we see the ways in which companies are controlling everything and objectifying people and turning everyone's personal lives into commodity, and for them to knock that out of the park. I do. But they're not going to do it if what they do is just have individual people on the team figure out ways to do that on their own without good consultant. And, maybe they did pay for consultants here. Keep doing it. Keep doing that work and try to do better, because a year from now we'll have all played that game, or we'll have not played that game because more content will come out that's like, yikes, you know what, I'm not going to support it. And we'll be able to look back and truly evaluate it and go like, well, what was the thing? What was it? Did it add up into something? And with every game we see here, I want it to add up into something special. I want to be able to look back and be like, the first time I played Star Wars, it was fucking great, and then it came out and it was even better. The first time I saw Cyberpunk, it looked cool, and then it came out and it was rocky, but it came out and it was good. I want to be optimistic about these games, and so it's just like, to do this job right for us is not to just give the preview list of like, there are 32 guns. It's like, here's where you need help right now. Do that, get that help,
Right.
So Michael Jordan, stop it, get some help. I think yet again we're ending here with a podcast today. CD Projekt Red.
Not at 2 a.m. though. So
no, it's not even 10.
Yeah,
we did the damn
Hell
thing.
yeah.
I'm gonna eat ice cream. It's
Hell
early enough
yeah.
now. Danica brought us ice cream. Thank you, Danica.
You're welcome.
Also, Danica, I need you to sign that paper again because my computer fell asleep last night and I lost your signature. Thank you. Don't worry about it, Rights and Clearances Department. She's right here. She's gonna sign it. It's gonna be okay.
What do I guess as we close, what are you seeing tomorrow?
What am I saying? Oh, Nintendo. I'm going to the Nintendo booth.
Nintendo.
Kato is gonna come with me. Natalie's gonna come with me.
So angry.
Hell yeah.
I could sneak you in, except that you are gonna be
have-
seeing something
yeah,
else at
I
that
have-
exact time.
Yes.
What are you gonna be seeing?
I don't know. This Google Doc won't.
I can
scroll
tell
over.
you.
Thank you. Can you tell me what I'm going to see?
While I step into the Nintendo booth, you're
I'm
gonna
going
be
to.
seeing.
I'm going to see Control. I'm going to play Control for an hour.
And before that,
I'm going to.
first Carrion,
Yes.
which I don't remember what that is.
It's a Devolver horror game in which the flip is that you're like the evil. Was
Right.
that Pixel
You're
game?
the
was toward
monster.
end?
You're the monster.
Yeah, you're the
Right,
monster.
right. That was
yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And then,
I don't.
how do I? What if I just got up and stood in the corner until you realized?
Oh, Blair Witch. Right. Yeah. I'm gonna go
was
see
good.
that game and
I
talk
should
to the
send you to the
developers.
corner.
Don't. I will just start crying.
Yeah. And then you're also going to see something else really good. Say hi to the queen of all sharks and all.
Oh,
of
right.
Earth
Yeah,
for me.
Man-Eater.
Man-Eater.
Oh, hell yeah.
So that should be fun. And then Kato, you are gonna do Cyberpunk tomorrow. So
Oh, yeah.
you'll
Well-
be able to weigh in on that demo.
Yeah.
Rob's gonna see that too.
It's not on his list.
No?
But
he-
it is.
Yeah,
It
it
is.
is.
It's
Yeah,
just
I thought
earlier.
so.
It's not the same demo.
No,
it's
we're
different demos.
stacked.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. That's all Rob has tomorrow. It's at 3 p.m. We can talk about E3 tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll do some checklisting on these other games.
Yep.
Yeah.
We've done most of the heavy lifting on games that are going to be really long discussions, so we can kind of talk. We can do the E3 discourse and close things out early tomorrow.
Yeah.
Sounds good to
Rob
me.
can sleep until 1:00.
You know what? Good for him. He cooked us food this week.
He did.
Yeah.
He sat in that very
We
small
mocked
car.
him for that idea.
We still have too much food. There are like 13 bananas
You know
left.
what? We ate more than I expected, though.
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm with
We
you.
made
Absolutely.
a good
He
chunk.
made us fried eggs.
Those were so good.
He made us breakfast.
He made
Yeah.
breakfast. Like
And it took
real,
requests. He's like, I made some hard-boiled eggs.
But
I
if
could also
you
do
would
fried
want-
eggs.
we do fried eggs.
Okay. 2, please.
My E3 was better for this.
Yeah.
So shout outs to Rob
We
for
should
cooking.
do that again tomorrow.
You'll
do we
be
have to
gone,
get in?
but- Yeah, sure.
When do we have to get in?
He has a 9:30.
Oh, damn. You'll be gone.
I have a noon. We can do it tomorrow.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Let's do some eggs and bacon.
It was the only Blair Witch they had, and I was like, oh, okay.
I get you. I go with Shark is first. Here at Shark at 10. So, yeah. That is going to do it for us. Check in tomorrow for our final day of E3 2019 coverage for all the things we just talked about and more, including Danica off mic.
Yeah, I was going
That
to
was
say.
Joel.
Oh, is Joel here?
Yeah.
Where's Joel?
He's in the kitchen.
Oh, wow. That was far. I could hear that carried all the way here. Hi, Joel. Hi. Joel's here. The whole family has been here this week, except for Mike Diver. Mike Diver, shout outs to you. You follow Mike Diver on Twitter at Mike Diver. You follow me at
What's that?
Austin,
What's his website?
The Lad Bible.
Yeah.
Game section, right? Mm-hmm. Hi, Joel. If you talk into this microphone, I don't need to make you sign something, but you should say hi anyway.
Hi.
What are you eating? What is this?
He got the ramen that we.
No, I got lo mein.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
lo mein.
Yeah.
Same place y'all ordered from.
Okay, that place was all right.
Pretty good.
Yeah. It was
Don't
solid.
get that pizza.
Follow me at Austin_Walker. You can follow Patrick at Patrick Klepek.
That's
Kato
true.
at A_Kato_appears.
That's
Everything
me.
that Waypoint does. Twitter.com/Waypoint. Facebook.com/WaypointVice. Right here at YouTube.com/WaypointVice.
Is
if
it
you're
still
watching this
Waypoint
live.
Vice, the Facebook one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not Vice Games.
All right.
So Twitter.com/Waypoint2, baby. we ain't giving that up quite yet. All of our E3 badges say different things.
Mine just says.
You're the only one who leveled up and left us behind.
But when I registered, I remember raising it to everyone. I was like, I wonder what you registered at because they won't let you change it when you re-register.
Oh.
And mine said Waypoint-Vice last year.
And
somehow I just became Vice.
I still have Waypoint. I shouldn't.
That's
hold
what
this
mine.
up.
Yeah, that's a QR code. Don't do that.
I still have Waypoint.
Wait,
Vice.
they can't see it.
That's fine.
Hold on.
Don't worry about it.
It's-
Don't-
it
you know
just-
what?
it
doesn't
says his
fucking matter.
name.
It has my name. It says Waypoint-Vice. Kato's is
Hefevice.
Waypoint. Hefeweizen.
Waypoint.
Waypoint.
Vice.
I think
close parentheses.
Natalie's just says this is waypoint.vice.com.
I think that's what mine would say too.
Yours would say new.donk.city. Yeah, so check us out tomorrow. We'll be doing one more day of this, and then you'll find us actually tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Over on the Giant Bomb Couch, and we're gonna go visit our friends there and hang out and catch
They
up.
don't know it yet. We're just gonna
We're
show
We're
up.
gonna show up, and they're gonna put us on the couch, or else.
That's reasonable.
That's
Or
reasonable.
else.
Or else. God, can you take us out with some good? Oh,
Yeah, that music's
can
going.
we?
Okay.
Did you see this? I'm gonna open up. Is it Instagram?
Oh, do you want to just show them out here?
Yeah, you have it ready to go. Can you zoom in on Patrick's phone in a second? Shout outs to Acast, which is the company that puts the ads in our podcast.
Yeah.
Because, and I'll just show it to you by going live, Joel. Pull this over here. Yeah, wow, we're live on YouTube for real. Look at this. That does look good, right? And here we go. Acast put a little promo up for us that they did. Here comes Kato zooming in on it, bit by bit. What's that say, Joel? Can you see? Not yet. He's doing his best. We're on delay. YouTube has a longer delay than Twitch does. I think you can turn it up. Did it go dark? I'm going to zoom in on my own computer. It is kind of small. I do see the Waypoint logo. What else do you see?
I see some sort of banner.
What's it say? What's it say, Joel?
Have a holly jolly gamer Christmas. Oh, thanks.
Thanks, Acast. I think they just heard us do the Christmas music bit, and they were like, "Yeah, that's an advertisement." So, thank you to Acast for doing that.
Thanks for listening. Hey, Cash. The Christmas. I said Merry Christmas on the day.
Gotcha. Okay, well there you go. And happy holidays to you too, gamers. We'll see you tomorrow with more from E3 2019. Peace.
I was standing up.
Peace.
Hold on one second.
All right, ready?
Yeah.
Peace.
Peace.